August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd of June. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, supporters of Palestine Action descend on central London as the Home Secretary prepares to prescribe the group as a terror organisation. The Met Police Chief says he's shocked and frustrated the rally's going ahead.
Yes, welcome to Trafalgar Square. The Palestine Action rally about to kick off behind me. Not particularly busy at the moment, but maybe it will get slightly busier soon. Stay tuned.
I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation, and to get to a negotiated outcome.
Well, terror fears grow in Britain as Iran pledges payback on the United States and its allies after the attack on their nuclear infrastructure.
Well, both Israel and Iran have continued to trade blows overnight and into this morning. Israel confirming it has struck a notorious prison in Tehran that houses hundreds of political prisoners.
And Nigel Farage unveils Reform UK's Robin Hood plan to unite the rich and the poor. Well, will this entice non-doms back to the UK? And frankly, will it work?
You say, why do we bother? Because the people next door do nothing, and they're pretty much as well off as we are.
And primary and secondary pupils are being encouraged to wear the pride colours and take part in LGBT plus lessons this week, all in a push for inclusion. Why?
And a heatwave hero. Yes, this is incredible. A Just Eat delivery driver came to the rescue of dozens of passengers stranded on a train over the weekend as he threw bottles of water to those struggling in the sweltering heat.
I wondered why my delivery was late. And distressing scenes from the Greek island of Chios as holidaymakers are forced to flee for their lives.
Elsewhere, a loony council blames climate change for its decision to axe a popular airshow featuring the Red Arrows. Why do some councils simply hate fun? We'll speak to one very disgruntled resident.
It's also, Tom, Is it 9 years now since the Brexit
to
vote?
the day, 23rd of June 2016.
Do you remember where you were?
I do. I got up at about 4 in the morning, and we did a so-called dawn raid. I was part of the campaign, delivering leaflets across the...
You were a big name in the campaign, Tom.
I was doing my foot soldier work throughout the day up in County Durham.
Yes.
And then I got the last possible train down to London on the close of poll. I got into Vote Leave HQ at around... it was after polls had closed, but it was before... Or no, it was after the first result. I don't know. It was around midnight that I made it to Vote Leave HQ.
Yeah.
And there was such a strange atmosphere in the room. But it wasn't until the Sunderland result came in, and that was the first counting area on the mainland country. And there was just this moment of, like, wow, this is well beyond what people in the room had expected.
This is happening. It's happening.
Yeah.
Well, I was at Glastonbury, and as you can imagine, it wasn't a very vote leave kind of place.
No.
And tears were shed, not from me. I think I was the only one in the village celebrating.
Wow.
And then I remember the following day, David Cameron resigned, didn't he? Almost immediately. And that was rather emotional. It all seemed to be going wrong immediately.
So when you were in Glastonbury, I mean...
I had to run up the hill to try and get some... to try and call people.
Obviously, the result came through, and it was like 5 a.m. Were you awake?
I was awake, yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I must have been.
Yeah.
Anyway, where were you when the country decided to vote leave, and have we made a mess of it, or are things looking... well, at least we can blame our politicians, can't we?
I think this is the big thing. I think no one can say that domestic politics have taken all the right decisions in the last 9 years.
No.
But certainly we can blame domestic politicians for the choices they have made.
That's true.
I have to say, the morning after, so
we're going to be late for the headlines at this rate.
Well, we can reminisce. We can reminisce more in later hours of this programme. So much more to come. Of course, we will be covering the developing situation in the Middle East and this prescribing of a new terror organisation, or is it a terror organisation? That after your headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. The top stories. The Israeli Defence Forces have said more missiles have been launched from Iran towards Israel. Approximately 15 Iranian missiles were launched in the latest wave of attacks, and shrapnels landed in several locations after they were intercepted, according to reports. That's as the US President Donald Trump has hailed bullseye strikes on Iran as he calls for a regime change and says it's time to make Iran great again. It comes in the aftermath of the US striking 3 key nuclear sites in Iran. Fears grow as experts warn nuclear material could have been moved ahead of the Operation Midnight Hammer. It comes as satellite images reveal Iran's Fordo nuclear site was severely damaged. It's unclear as to whether it was completely destroyed. Iran's supreme leader broke his silence in reaction to the strikes yesterday on X, stating the enemy had made a grave mistake. Sir Keir Starmer's warned there's a risk of the Middle East crisis spiralling beyond the region. Downing Street says the US President and Sir Keir agreed Tehran must not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon and called for Iran to return to negotiations. Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge spoke to GB News.
Just not clear what he actually thinks of the attacks. If you look at the language, he's talking about, recognising the action has happened, that he's spoken to the president. Does he actually support the actual military action? Because, let's be clear, lots of people say, lots of politicians in this country, lots of our allies, quite rightly, and it's important that they do, they recognise that Iran can't be allowed to have a military nuclear programme, but at the same time it's not clear what the action is that they would take to deal with that.
The Metropolitan Police Chief says he's shocked and frustrated at a planned protest in support of Palestine Action in London today. Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley said while the right to protest is essential, actions in support of such a group go beyond what most would see as legitimate protest. It comes as the Home Secretary is understood to be preparing a written statement to put before Parliament today to prescribe the group, effectively branding it a terrorist organisation. On Friday, Palestine Action activists broke into RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire and sprayed 2 military planes with red paint in protest of the UK's support of Israel over the war in Gaza. At least 22 people have been killed after a suicide bomber opened fire at a church in Syria and then detonated an explosive vest. This is the first such incident since Bashar al-Assad was toppled in December, and officials claim the attacker was a member of the Islamic State terror group. It happened at a Greek Orthodox church in Damascus, with estimates suggesting 350 worshippers were praying there at the time. Witnesses said the perpetrator had his face covered when he began shooting and blew himself up as crowds attempted to remove him from the building. Elsewhere, lowering energy costs for thousands of businesses by scrapping green levies will form part of a central part of the government's new 10-year industrial strategy. The plan, which may slash energy bills by up to 25% for more than 7,000 UK businesses, is set to be unveiled today alongside other measures hoped to boost growth. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer called the industrial strategy a turning point for Britain's economy by supporting key industries where there is potential for growth. Acting Shadow Energy Secretary Andrew Bowie criticised the plan, saying the UK needs a serious approach to energy policy. A man has been charged with the murder of a woman found fatally stabbed after a gas explosion at her home in North London. 44-year-old Clifton George was also charged with arson with intent to endanger life after 36-year-old Annabelle Rook was found fatally injured in Stoke Newington just before 5 a.m. last Tuesday. Mr. George, who was found with slash injuries, appears in court today. A West Yorkshire police officer who'd been reported missing has now been found dead, the force has confirmed. Charlie Mitchell, a 26-year-old patrol officer from Halifax, was reported missing from his home in Leeds on Saturday. West Yorkshire police said officers searching St Aidan's Nature Reserve near Leeds found his body around 5:30 yesterday afternoon. His death is not being treated as suspicious. And the mass rollout of weight loss jabs on the NHS in England will begin today as GPs are allowed to prescribe the drugs for the first time. Around 220,000 people with greatest need are expected to receive Mounjaro through the NHS over the next 3 years. It's an anti-diabetic drug which lowers blood sugar levels and slows down how quickly food is digested. From today, GPs in England will be allowed to prescribe Mounjaro to severely obese people who also suffer from a range of other health problems. The medicine makes you feel fuller so you can eat less. In clinical trials, people taking it lost 20% of their body weight. And those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3402 and €1.1684. The price of gold is £2,511.96 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,779 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 minutes past midday, and the Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, has expressed his shock and frustration at a protest being held today in support of Palestine Action, which will be prescribed as an organised extremist criminal group.
Yes, we're looking at live pictures there in Trafalgar Square where the protest is beginning to take place. And there for us is our reporter, Adam Cherry. Adam, you're in the thick of it. How's it looking?
It's growing in size a little bit. It has to start after 12 p.m. It's now about 10 past, so I suppose people are starting to arrive in drips and drabs. Those watching on television see behind me, we're directly beside Nelson's column here. Lots of Palestine flags. It's all sort of familiar territory. This has been happening in London since really October 2023, every Saturday. And you can see it's now growing in size here. I've spotted one or two LGBTQ flags as well, which is, I suppose, slightly ironic given Iran's attitude towards those things. It has to close, or end rather, by 3 o'clock. That's by the order of the Metropolitan Police. And they're saying there is also an exclusion zone. Camera operator here, Steve, is just going to show you some of the policemen arriving. There's a growing police presence. and there's several police vans on the roundabout to my right as well. Now down towards Whitehall, you'll see down that road there, that's of course where Parliament is, that's where Westminster is, that's the exclusion zone, so this protest cannot go down there. That exclusion zone is in place all the way around Parliament itself. And as I was cycling through this morning, actually, I was seeing a building, presence of police there as well. Nothing massive, but certainly enough to contain a protest of this size. So we're going to be here throughout the afternoon. As I say, it has to finish by 3 o'clock per the Met's instructions, see if anything changes, see if they move, and of course give it to all our viewers when it happens, guys.
Well, thank you, Adam. And I guess, yes, there have been a lot of protests, of course, in support of Palestine and against Israel over the months and recent years. But I guess the context has changed, considering that Yvette Cooper is now expected to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist group. So presumably all of these people that have decided to descend on Trafalgar Square today are in support of Palestine Action, which, as we know, has committed many a criminal activity, Adam. OK, well, Tom, I put that to you.
Yeah, no, I think that this is the difficulty thing, because once Palestine Action is actually prescribed, expressing support for it will be a criminal offence.
Well, someone who's expressed support for it very vocally is Humza Yousaf, who, of course, was the First Minister of Scotland till not that long ago. I don't know if we can bring up a little clip that he was sharing across social media, because yes, it could be illegal, potentially, to show that much support for such a group. Let's have a listen.
The decision to prescribe Palestine Action is shameful. It's an abuse of anti-terror legislation. And when you convince yourself as a government that the terrorists are the ones who are trying to stop genocide, whereas the ones who are killing children should get weapons and bombs, then not only have you lost your way, but you've lost your conscience.
So is he in support of the criminal activity? Is he in support of people going into RAF bases and trying to vandalise and potentially damage aircraft? What is he exactly saying there?
This is the thing. The government isn't making it illegal to go on a Palestinian protest.
No, they're not.
It's a free country. If you want to wave that flag that we're seeing on our screen right now, knock your socks off. Go on, do it. If you want to chant, if you want to say what, lots of people will disagree with you, lots of people will agree with you. That's fine. What the government is saying is that you can't break into a secure military facility and cause millions of pounds of damage to RAF planes. How is that a remotely controversial position?
Well, in North London, there seems to be a little sort of silent war going on. You have yellow ribbons being put up down the street on railings and things, obviously in support of Israeli hostages. Then you have people ripping them down, replacing with boycott Israel stickers and the like, and it goes back and forward. Not a very happy society at the moment in some respects.
Wars on our streets. But in other news, of course, related news, but other news, President Trump hails a bullseye in his strikes on Iran as he calls for a regime change and says it's time to, get this, make Iran great again. Well, it comes in the aftermath of the US striking 3 key nuclear sites in Iran, Fordo, Isfahan and Natanz. Well, that's as fears grows that among experts, that Iran could have relocated some of its nuclear material before the US launched its Operation Midnight Hammer. Well, Iran's supreme leader broke his silence overnight for the first time since America's direct attack, calling Donald Trump's decision a grave mistake and vowing to continue enriching Iran's uranium. Oh, good. Well, here to tell us more is our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, we don't actually know how successful the American operation was.
No, because the battle damage assessment hasn't yet been carried out in full, and it's unlikely to be able to give us an indication of what is happening deep underground at the Fordo nuclear complex. And we know it's buried very deep in that mountainside. So he's basing it on satellite images, whatever they were able to discern themselves from what they can see and their intelligence sources on the ground. But interestingly, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the nuclear watchdog for the UN, have said that with regard to the other nuclear complexes at Isfahan and at Natanz, they are very severely damaged from what they can see. They believe that Fordo will have suffered significant damage, but like the Americans, they don't know what's going on underground. Certainly what the Americans have absolutely achieved is being able to block those entrances and exits, bring down thousands of tons of rock onto them. So effectively the site is unusable anyway because it's just not accessible for those teams. And to stop teams going in to try to dig it out again, we've seen some operations by the Israelis this morning targeting Fordo again, going after the sort of routes in and out of the Fordo complex.
And what does this mean for us here? People talking about an elevated terror risk. We know that Iran encourages extremism in this country, Islamic extremism. We know that they have their tentacles all over the Western world. Could we see that threat increase?
Well, I think there's no doubt.
Have we seen it increase already?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt about that. And beyond encouraging, they have actually, sanctioned and been behind, according to our intelligence agencies and the police and politicians, a number of plots in this country targeting dissidents and also, we were told, going after the US embassy, or the Israeli embassy, I should say, in London. And of course, the incident of sabotage at Bryce Norton, which of course is resulting in the what we're seeing now, the move to prescribe Palestine action, is another area of great concern, because you would have thought, actually, in light of what has happened with the Ukraine war, and then after October 7th and all of the heightened security and concerns around the Middle East, that our bases would be very, very secure. But clearly, this, our busiest RAF base, does not seem to be that secure when you can get these two individuals going in unnoticed, but not just that, carrying out an act of sabotage in two planes and then exiting the base unnoticed. That is of real concern, there is no doubt.
Well, Mark White, thanks for bringing us the very latest there. Of course, we'll be back with you throughout the programme, as this is a developing situation.
It is indeed. Well, let's get some more reaction from the co-chair of the Northwest Friends of Israel, Rafi Bloom. Rafi, thank you very much for joining us on this. Hearing that Israel, more strikes.
Absolutely, and I think what your security correspondent just said is correct. The purpose of the original strikes was never to destroy the uranium, which would have caused a radioactive incident and affected the wider region. The purpose was always to stop it from being refined from 60% to 90% and being made into weapons-grade material. And I think what the Americans did and what the Israelis are doing again today, subsequently at Fordo, is to stop that from happening. The uranium will be found, it will be destroyed, it will be removed. But at this stage, it was about stopping further weaponization of that uranium, which, let's be clear, was only for military purposes. Otherwise, why would you go from 3.5% even to 60% when you're only, albeit, so they claim, intent on civilian purposes?
Yeah, and of course, for civilian purposes, for nuclear power, 3.5 to 4% is all you need. But I wonder, is this America now getting dragged into something that Donald Trump, to a large extent, campaigned on staying out of? He was very proud to have been the only president in the last 30 years to not have been involved in a foreign conflict. And now we see an operation of large magnitude, albeit one that was in and out. But perhaps more concerningly, in recent hours, Donald Trump has posted a tweet on his social network Truth Social talking about regime change in Iran. I mean, could this be the United States being dragged in to yet another protracted war in the Middle East aimed at changing a regime?
I think that it would only become a protracted war if there were boots on the ground, and there's certainly been no indication whatsoever at the moment of American boots on the ground. But I think it's also important to be clear what the Iranian regime means for us here in the West and in Europe and in America. I mean, this is a regime that has funded, armed and directed multiple terrorist proxies and organizations around the Middle East to attack not just the state of Israel, but US troops and other British troops, for example, stationed in and around the Middle East. Organizations like Hezbollah for decades have been some of the biggest drug runners in Central America. And so Donald Trump taking out the regime and now saying that he wants regime change, I think regime change is good for the entire region. I think the Saudis would welcome it quietly, even though they're not saying it publicly. I think the Gulf states would welcome it. I mean, this is a regime who shouts, you know, death to America, death to Israel, death to the West. And they funded, armed and directed Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis and other organizations for decades. So regime change is good.
OK, well, Rafi Bloom, thank you very much indeed. You're the co-chair of the Northwest Friends of Israel. Thank you for your time this afternoon. It's very interesting speaking to Iranians living in Britain, isn't it, who actually know what this regime means on the ground and the amount of support there is for Israel and now the United States to get rid of these guys.
Yeah, although obviously that's a skewed sample.
It's divided, of course.
Because those are the people that left the regime. The ones that stayed might not be quite so pro-Israel.
Yes. I mean, you can speak to someone and they say, well, only about 10% of Iranians support this regime. Most people don't really know where they stand with the regime. But there will be heavy support too.
I mean, there's not opinion polling in Iran.
Very difficult. Very difficult. And people presumably are friends with people who see things in a similar way to themselves. But it is very interesting because a lot of these Iranians look at what's happening on our streets, look at people with a placard of the Ayatollah saying be on the right side of history, and they think, what on earth is happening to the West? Why are there so many useful idiots supporting such a regime? Anyway, that's enough of that. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Absolutely. We're going to move on because distressing scenes from the Greek island of Chios as holidaymakers are forced to flee for their lives. More on that later.
But after the break, Nigel Farage unveils Reform UK's Robin Hood plan to apparently unite the rich and the poor and entice those non-doms back to the United Kingdom. But will it work?
They say, why do we bother? Because the people next door do nothing and they're pretty much as well off as we are.
Five hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Front page of the Times today says exercise proves the best therapy for keeping cancer at bay. Let's get the views of Tim Vincent.
It's quite an exciting trial, this. There's new findings every single day, isn't there? But I think this has been done over many years by a lot of people. And it actually says, what you'd assume would be the case is that if you exercise, then it keeps your health in a better condition and will keep cancer from returning measurably, notably.
Yeah.
So I think it's 30-something%. And this is on people that have had cancer and then are encouraged to exercise. And there's many doctors over the years have said, not quite sure. If you feel like you can exercise, then exercise. They're now saying you should exercise as soon as you feel good enough.
This will
make a big difference.
This makes me feel awful because I would have been pro-exercise, except I can't move. I'm in a wheelchair now, and I can't put on the right trainers, I can't change, I can't go to the showers, I can't do things. It's just I can't stand up. So there are a lot of people who are incapable of exercising, and therefore, rightly so, we see their increase of cancer growing.
Absolutely, and that's an issue that everybody's going to face, and you're obviously in a really difficult position. Any exercise, I think, is going to help, especially for these people that have had cancer once and can get out there. And it's very isolating as well, exercising.
So you're actually saying, if you're in redemption from cancer or whatever, you could keep it at bay by exercising.
It's actually better than a pill.
Yeah.
The results are actually better than a pill.
I think it's 36%, isn't it, for exercise?
Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past midday. Now, Nigel Farage has said he will reinstate non-dom status for wealthy entrepreneurs if they pay a £250,000 fee, which will be handed directly to low-income workers.
Yes, get your head around this. They'll be issued a Britannia card after they pay this fee, making them exempt from paying taxes, including inheritance tax.
Our tax take is falling. Many talented people are leaving, and we want, as a party, as many entrepreneurs, as many risk takers, as many job creators, as many people paying lots of tax, as many people investing huge sums of money. We want as many of them as possible to be in our country. And that is why today we're coming up with this idea of the Britannia card, which Zia will go into more detail. But we're also doing something with a very specific aim, aimed at those in work. One of the things that we heard so often, heading up to the 1st of May local elections, a young couple that work, pay for childcare, they say, why do we bother? Because the people next door do nothing, and they're pretty much as well off as we are. And so many things that we've talked about making that gap between being on benefits and going to work bigger. And this policy will directly contribute towards that.
What do you make of that, Tom?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that there are rich people leaving this country. But is this the way to entice them back? Let's discuss this with the Reform Councillor, Jamie McIver. Jamie, thanks for being with us, and thanks indeed for bringing your policy with you.
Here it is.
Got it here live in the studio.
Absolutely beautiful.
Now, the Britannia card.
Now, there are lots of countries that have incentive schemes for high net worth individuals. We used to have one called the non-dom scheme. Portugal has one, Italy has one, Austria has one. They're trying to bring rich people here. But what's different about yours is that the money raised will be going directly to low-income households. How will that work?
Well, I think, first of all, the Reform Party is all about family, community, country. And so any policy that we announce is, of course, along those lines. And what we've got in this country is a terrible situation. Families unable, on low incomes, that are working hard, setting their alarm clock every evening, getting up early, going to work, struggling to make ends meet, as Nigel Farage said, whilst their neighbours perhaps are doing nothing and almost having equal lives. But you've also got this huge loss of talent in this country and entrepreneurship that is fleeing, frankly, Britain because of the fact we're not making Britain an attractive place to do business. And so in the theme of family, community, country, we're putting money back into the pockets of families, but we're also making our country a place
how do you make
that
sure
people
this
want to do business.
Sounds nice, but how do you make sure this money doesn't go to layabouts?
Well, I think, first of all, this is going to working people. That's really important. And actually, if you think about it logically, there are two big problems. We have got people on low incomes in this country that are struggling to make ends meet, and then we have people that are successful that are choosing to leave. What this is doing is enticing foreign investment to our country and bringing those entrepreneurs to Britain, but actually giving that money, that revenue that the country gains off the back of it, to working
Hang on,
families.
Jamie, what about the average worker? What about someone on an average salary who isn't in the lowest 10%, but they're not exactly feeling rich? Are they just forgotten by reform?
Well, of course they're not, and absolutely you're right to bring this up. And of course there are people that are in the middle of this
A lot of people, most people are in the middle.
Absolutely, but I think fundamentally people in the middle, yes, of course they're getting by, but we would be wrong to just start focusing on that group of people at this moment in time when there are people that are really desperately unable to put food on the table for their families.
Now, there is, of course, the argument that has been made, that will be made, that this isn't necessarily going to raise money. Yes, of course, it might bring more people in, but what if there are rich people who have currently chosen, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet, I'm going to pay the high taxes of the UK, I'm going to stay here. Under this scheme, couldn't they say, I can half my tax bill. I can get myself a Britannia card. They were always going to live here, but they're just going to do it with less tax now. Could we not be actually foregoing some revenue under this scheme?
Absolutely not, because if you think about it, the HMRC have already admitted they don't look at the other wider tax revenue that comes from people coming to this country. So if you actually look at things like VAT receipts, but also if you just look at the wider trickle economic effect of people coming to this country and being of a high net worth, they are, of course, are investing in Britain and spending money all the time.
Doesn't it sound a bit socialist, though, Jamie? Is reform becoming a bit of a left-wing party? Because all this redistribution of wealth, why does someone who just happens to be on a low-paid job deserve to have free money?
Because for the first time ever, probably in politics in a very long time, you've got a party that's actually putting the British people first with their policy-making decisions.
Only if you're on the lowest 10%.
Not at all. That's not true, because we've got plenty of other policies that I'm sure you know will be coming down the line. But if you just look at this specific policy, we're encouraging some of the most successful people to come to Britain, and that is going to help support some of the people on the lowest incomes who are just about getting by at the moment. And nobody in politics is looking out for these people at the moment. They've been fundamentally let down by the Labour Party, and the Conservative Party couldn't give two hoots about them.
OK, well, reform is doing rather well in the polls. We'll see if this has an impact.
Certainly will. Well, Jamie McIver, thanks indeed for coming in and explaining and indeed bringing that shiny new policy, as I'm sure we're going to be getting some more policies from these parties as indeed the weeks and months go on.
Absolutely. We're going to be speaking to our political editor very soon, aren't we?
We will indeed. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's lots more to come on today's programme, including a loony council blames climate change for its decision to axe a popular airshow featuring the Red Arrows. Why do some councils simply hate fun? We'll be speaking to one disgruntled resident.
But after the break, primary and secondary pupils are being encouraged to wear pride colours and take part in LGBT plus lessons this week, all in a push for inclusion. Why? That's after your news.
Emily, thank you. The headlines at 12:30. Israel's launched a new attack on access routes to Iran's Fordo nuclear site today as President Trump has hailed bullseye strikes on Iran. Here's the US Defense Secretary.
As the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will demonstrate, it was an incredible and overwhelming success.
Elsewhere, lowering energy costs for thousands of businesses by scrapping green levies will form a central part of the government's new 10-year industrial strategy. The plans to be unveiled today. A man's been charged with the murder of Annabelle Rook, found fatally stabbed after a gas explosion at her home in North London. A West Yorkshire police officer, Charlie Mitchell, who'd been reported missing, has now been found dead. And the mass rollout of weight loss jabs on the NHS in England will begin today as GPs are allowed to prescribe the drugs for the first time. And those are the latest headlines for now. More at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A fresher feel for most today, certainly compared to much of last week. Bright and breezy, many places dry with some sunny spells, but there are a few showers around across the northwest, close to this area of low pressure. That's what's changed the weather. The winds now coming in from the west, a fresher feel from the Atlantic. Some wet weather across the Northern Isles. That'll continue on and off through the day today. The showers will come and go across western Scotland. The odd shower elsewhere, northwest England, North Wales may be catching one, but many places dry As I said, bright and breezy. That breeze is, though, quite noticeable, bringing that fresher feel. Temperatures only in the teens in many western areas, but still quite warm across the southeast, 23, 24 degrees Celsius likely here. As we go through the night, we will start to see a change. Stays a bit damp in Shetland, but some cloud is gathering out west. But a fine evening nonetheless for East Anglia and the southeast. Temperatures staying in the 20s here, but the clouds steadily increasing from the west, so Northern Ireland seeing the clouds starting to thicken. Still a few showers for the evening across the far north of England, and coming in at times across Scotland, most frequent over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but still some could get through the central belt. And then eyes out west as that thickening cloud in Northern Ireland starts to produce some damp conditions during the evening. Rain and drizzle pushing in across Northern Ireland by midnight, and then that zone of rain spreads into southern Scotland, northern England, north and west Wales. And some of it could be on the heavy side, particularly through the early hours over North Wales and northwest England. Will be a pretty warm night, with temperatures holding up in the mid-teens. Staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast. And might even start sunny here early on Tuesday, but the cloud will increase pretty rapidly. A dull, damp morning for northwest England, North Wales, southwest Scotland. The rain on and off here through much of the day. It does turn a bit brighter, and with some sunny spells across the Midlands and eastern England, it'll feel pretty warm and humid here, with temperatures in the mid-20s. Elsewhere again, high teens or low 20s.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. High winds have closed the A92 Tay Road Bridge to double-decker vehicles and imposed a 30 miles per hour speed limit, causing challenging conditions. The A44 is closed between Langerig and Troderalt for maintenance, with diversions. In Knowsley, the M57 southbound has a lane closed between junctions 3 and 2 for a tyre change. In Shropshire, congestion on the A5 southbound between junctions with the A488 and the A49 causes 10-minute delays. The A11 southbound in Norfolk has a road incident with one lane closed. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast disruption between Wolverhampton and Birmingham New Street. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past midday. Now the UK recorded the hottest day of the year so far on Saturday, with parts of the country reaching a scorching 34 degrees.
Yeah, I know. It was blimmin' hot. Too hot for me, anyway. But it wasn't good news for everyone, of course. A Just Eat rider became a hero on social media after he threw a food delivery up to the train stranded on the tracks. Now, is he a hero for doing this?
Oh, yeah, I think he's a legend.
He's a legend in the making.
Look at that. I mean, he saw people that were clearly hot and bothered. The train, I think, was stuck because it got too hot and nothing works in this country. So absolutely fantastic.
OK, so it wasn't a paying customers delivery that he was shucking up there.
Oh, I don't know.
That was your burrito. It was on the way.
Well, I think it's bottles of water.
Yeah, so he must have just found them and just decided bought them and decided to help out.
Unless some enterprising person on the train ordered it to the train, in which case, also legend.
Oh, yes. Well, that may well be the case. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Than some random Just Eat driver thinking he'll throw some bottled water up to the train.
Yeah.
Yes, perhaps it was ordered. Perhaps it was orders. Either way, it's a nice little picture of modern Britain.
Absolutely.
The graffiti there to match. But yes, apparently it was an absolute nightmare. Trains from London to Brighton, I think, stopped and people had to get out of the trains and walk down the tracks, I think.
Oh, God, that's not what you
So let us know if you were involved in all of that drama.
I have to say, I chose the hottest day of the year so far to go for a lovely little run. Which perhaps was not the best day of the year to do it, but you know, got to stay healthy.
I went to a nail salon and they had to bring out a special fan just for me, and mopped my brow for me.
When you say a special fan, it was just someone wanting your autograph? Or?
Oh well, you know that happens every time I go to the nail salon, obviously. But no, this was one of those fans that bring you cold air.
Marvellous.
So that was rather nice. Anyway, that's enough of me.
Well, whether you love it or you hate it, today is the start of School Diversity Week.
Yes, schools all across the country are taking part, with the goal being to raise awareness of positive LGBT+ messaging OK, fine.
So, should we welcome this, or is this a cynical attempt to bring politics into the classroom?
Well, it looks like it. Let's speak to Christine Cunniff, who is the principal at LVS Ascot. Christine, does LVS Ascot do such things?
No, we don't. No, we don't. I think, you know, we're an inclusive society. We've got good education in place for all our children, and we don't feel the need to have a week dedicated to it.
Why not?
Well, I think we're a very, as I say, inclusive school. We've got 44 different nationalities. We've got people from different socio-economic backgrounds. We're very open and transparent in our culture. We've got excellent policies and procedures in place, and our PHSE programme is, I would say, absolutely outstanding. So we're in a fully inclusive community who are open and talk, and we have guest speakers throughout the year who come into our school for various talks, but we don't celebrate it all in one week, because I think if you're truly inclusive, it's happening all the time within your schools.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, because back when I was at school, I just think when something was trying to be imposed upon the body from on high, and maybe it's because I went to a boys' school, but people had a tendency to mock things that were, you know, that were tried to be foisted upon the population. And I just wonder if there is a week dedicated to a thing like diversity, could that actually provide a backlash rather than the aim of the diversity week in the first place, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think all experiences should be positive experiences, and I think putting everything into 1 week, as you say, raises attention to, you know, topics that we should be talking about. But really, we shouldn't do it in 1 week and then it's almost like tokenism. These are conversations and programmes of study over a period of time, so that children open up and talk to each other and their parents. It's about a community and about doing things all through the year.
Also, Christine, let's be honest. I mean, Pride is about your sexuality. You know, it's about who you are attracted to, who you want to marry, who you want to do the deed with, that sort of thing. It's not really something that should be, I don't know, celebrated in schools or everyone coming with the pride flag. I just don't understand why it would be relevant to primary school children, Christine.
Well, all schools have got relationship and sexual education programmes. You know, it's part of our requirement as a school to be able to deliver that broad conversation about things that we come across in life and how we explore who we are. And school by school will do it differently, but there are things that you have to cover at particular ages. But I am concerned sometimes that children are sometimes too young or immature to be able to talk about those things. And I think as a head teacher, you've got to gauge your children and the temperature. And what we tend to do, especially with our younger children, is we keep an eye on what's happening. And if we think there's a reason to explore something further with a particular child or group of children, then we will, rather than a blanket, because, you know, some of the topics, they're not fit for a whole year group to be doing at the same time, because some children will not cope with that, whereas others will.
OK, Christine Cunniff, thank you very much indeed. You're the principal at LVS Ascot. Nice to speak to you this afternoon. Yeah. Bizarre.
Well, just before we move on, wanted to draw this to your attention. J.K. Rowling has praised the BBC presenter Martine Croxall for overruling an autocue. We would never do such a thing. Overruling an autocue line that used the term pregnant people instead of women. Take a look.
London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has released research which says that nearly 600 heat-related deaths are expected in the UK. Malcolm Mystery, who is involved in the research, says that the aged, pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions...
She was well irritated by that. I think I've had that before, where I've disapproved of how something was written in an autocue and thought, I'm going to correct that with a little bit of sass.
A little, yeah. Because it's not just the way, it's not just what she said, it's the way that she said it. It's the sort of slight smirk and eyebrow raise.
It was a rebellion.
Yeah.
It was a little rebellion.
Just a little one. And I hope she's not sanctioned for this, because I know sometimes the BBC can be a bit fusty. But I hope that that everyone can see exactly what she was was doing, and I think that she would probably be speaking for a lot of people as she did it.
I imagine so. And now she's shot to more fame, hasn't she, overnight? I think all of this went very viral indeed. She's welcomed her new followers on Twitter off the back of this. It's all very amusing. But she has spoken out in the past, hasn't she, on various things by mistake, hasn't she? There was one incident. Over Boris Johnson.
Right.
Happy that he resigned, basically. Anyway, we'll bring you more detail on that if you want it. But let's take the travel weather, because it's nice on the continent.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Following a peak in the temperatures across the western Mediterranean in the last few days, it is now turning fresher. There are a few showers to watch out for, particularly across areas of Iberia. Generally, though, further east, it's high pressure in charge, and that's allowing the heat to also transfer eastwards. Particularly parts of northern Italy into the Balkans will see those temperatures climbing, but the high pressure also means there'll be plentiful amounts of sunshine for these regions right throughout the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:50. Now, Bournemouth, its much-loved airshow, has been grounded permanently. The Liberal Democrat-run council say it's too pricey, too polluting, and it's not great for climate change, but locals are livid.
Well, the iconic event pulled in £60 million and 600,000 visitors, but now critics have called the new ban a ban on fun and accused the council of killing tourism.
OK, we're joined by Chairman of the Conservative Councillors Association, Councillor Phil Broadhead. Phil, a lot of people angry about this, including yourself, I believe. What do you think is actually behind the cancellation of this air show?
Well, we've heard lots of excuses from the Lib Dem Council. We've heard that that there's not enough money, although, as you've heard, it brings in £60 million to the local economy per year, millions to what is, let's be honest, one of the best beaches in Europe, a fantastic place. It extends our season, and more importantly, is really fun, interesting, and put Bournemouth on the map. But frankly, the costs have been massively overstated. It costs about a couple of £100,000 per year to put on for £60 million of wider income. And it's been a fantastic event. We've also had a lot of local councillors from both the Lib Dems and Labour as well say that they don't like it because of climate change. A few people said it was triggering with all the noise. But to be honest, things like this are just too important to let go this easily.
Now, of course, that £60 million number, that's for the wider economy, not necessarily the income of the council. And I suppose we've seen up and down the country, some councils have gone bust, others are trying to cut back on services. I'm sure many people live in areas where their bin collections have been reduced. It does seem like it is incredibly a tough time for councils. I mean, is this not just the issue that there is a bottom line here? Councils have got a lot of spend that they have to make on, social care or disabled children and all the rest of it, and that's been exploding recently. That number's been going up and up and up. Is this not just an issue of there isn't enough cash?
Look, I've been in local government for many years. There's never enough cash. You're absolutely right, Tom. Every year, cost of services increases and there seems to be less money. But it all comes down to political priorities. I mean, when you are not talking millions of pounds per year to put this event on, particularly when you consider how much it brings into the local economy. And there's a reason that the tourist industry and hoteliers in Bournemouth are absolutely livid at this decision. But it is political priorities, because I'll give you an example. The same year that the Lib Dems in Bournemouth are basically scrapping this for good to save about 250,000, they're spending that exact same amount of money running a blanket 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on one very small part of the area with plans to put it across the whole of BCP. So it really comes down to priorities. And when it comes to it, their view is things like this event, looking after the wider economy, because they don't see that direct response to the income themselves, they're not interested, but it's just so small-minded.
Yeah, you're right. It's about priorities, isn't it? And I know that they've just hired a new chief exec on a salary of 220-odd grand. So there you go. Councillor Phil Broadhead, thank you very much indeed. You're the chairman of the Conservative Councillors Association down in Bournemouth. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I do love a good air show. Grew up next to one of the best airfields in the country, so...
Lucky old you, eh?
Often see World War II planes go over. Brilliant. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there is lots more coming up today. Don't go anywhere. I want to bring you some pictures now, because supporters of Palestine Action have descended on central London as the Home Secretary prepares to prescribe this group as a terror organisation. So do stay with us. We'll bring you those pictures of what is a expanding protest in central London in favour of this group that is going to be proscribed. Much more on that to come in the next hour.
Don't you just love to see it on the streets of Britain, our capital city? Oh, wonderful stuff. We'll be there and we'll find out exactly what's going on. Stick with us. It's the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A fresher feel for most today, certainly compared to much of last week. Bright and breezy, many places dry with some sunny spells, but there are a few showers around across the northwest, close to this area of low pressure. That's what's changed the weather. The winds now coming in from the west, a fresher feel from the Atlantic. Some wet weather across the Northern Isles. That'll continue on and off through the day today. The showers will come and go across western Scotland. The odd shower elsewhere, northwest England, North Wales may be catching one, but many places dry,
As I said, bright and breezy. That breeze is, though, quite noticeable, bringing that fresher feel. Temperatures only in the teens in many western areas, but still quite warm across the southeast, 23, 24 degrees Celsius likely here. As we go through the night, we will start to see a change. Things a bit damp in Shetland, but some cloud is gathering out west. But a fine evening nonetheless for East Anglia and the southeast. Temperatures staying in the 20s here, but the clouds steadily increasing from the west, so Northern Ireland seeing the clouds starting to thicken. Still a few showers for the evening across the far north of England, and coming in at times across Scotland, most frequent over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but still some could get through the central belt. And then eyes out west as that thickening cloud in Northern Ireland starts to produce some damp conditions during the evening. Rain and drizzle pushing in across Northern Ireland by midnight, and then that zone of rain spreads into southern Scotland, northern England, north and west Wales. And some of it could be on the heavy side, particularly through the early hours over North Wales and northwest England. Will be a pretty warm night, with temperatures holding up in the mid-teens. Staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast. And might even start sunny here early on Tuesday, but the cloud will increase pretty rapidly. A dull, damp morning for northwest England, North Wales, southwest Scotland. The rain on and off here through much of the day. It does turn a bit brighter, and with some sunny spells across the Midlands and eastern England, it'll feel pretty warm and humid here, with temperatures in the mid-20s. Elsewhere again, high teens or low 20s.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, in the past few minutes, Meghan Markle has paid a sweet tribute to Princess Lilibet as she turns 4 today. It comes just a day after the Duchess of Sussex said she'd love to go into business with her daughter in the future.
Well, that's all it is, another money-making effort there. That's to make up for nobody buying her jam. I mean, do you really care if you see a picture of her kid or not? You do, that's it.
I'd like to see her face, to be honest.
I don't. Now, back to Diana, of course, who was a real star and style icon and whatever. And one day I remember I complimented her on her outfit that she was wearing, and it was the same colour as the outfit you were wearing yesterday.
Bottle green?
No. RUC green, Royal Ulster Constabulary green, as she pointed out to me. She said, yes, RUC green, what do you think? And then she went into a whole, literally, sob story. She started crying about a bomb explosion there'd been in Northern Ireland or whatever. She was very, very close, very connected with all of that. But, yeah, so...
And knowledgeable as well, by the sound of things,
She was very knowledgeable, yeah. And then she went on to talk about William and Harry going to school and how that upset her, and they went to boarding school or whatever it is. So we talked about all those things. And I forgot why I was going to tell you that story, but there was some reason. But she was... it was the same colour as what you were wearing yesterday, anyway, the green.
And she was so lovely by the sounds of things.
She was film star status. I mean, you just saw her in a room and you would go...
Wow.
She's special, yeah, she's special.
And I think whoever that was speaking in that report there saying, one of the designers, I think it was the designer of the wedding dress, saying it was just clothes or just a dress, but then Diana wore it and then it was something special. Absolutely. And it became part of history. And that's exactly what happened.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd of June. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, supporters of Palestine Action have descended on central London. You can see their live pictures from Trafalgar Square as the Home Secretary prepares to prescribe the group as a terrorist organisation. The Met Police Chief says he's shocked and frustrated that the rally is going ahead.
Yes, welcome back to Trafalgar Square here. You can see the protest carrying on behind me. Several arrests made and an increased police presence. More shortly.
I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation, and to get to a negotiated outcome.
And terror fears grow in Britain as Iran pledges payback on the United States and its allies after their attack on Iranian nuclear infrastructure.
Well, with tensions high in the region, the US State Department has issued an urgent appeal to those in Qatar to shelter in place.
And work starts on evacuating vulnerable Britons from Israel as UK says go back to the negotiating table.
And distressing scenes from the Greek island of Chios as holidaymakers are forced to flee for their lives from the flames.
Meanwhile, a record 50,000 migrants are now waiting to appeal their rejected asylum claims while continuing to be put up in hotels, all paid for by you and me. Do we need to rethink this appeals process in its entirety?
And good news if you've packed on the pounds. From today, GPs can prescribe weight loss drugs to almost 250,000 people across England. We'll be speaking to one woman who wishes the jabs were available to her before she lost 12 stone through surgery.
And the latest victim of this loony madness has been claimed. Yes, classic nursery rhymes have been slapped with bonkers trigger warnings for children. Stay tuned to find out why Three Little Piggies is now too terrifying for your toddler.
Well, it does look like things are beginning to, get a little more active down at that Palestine Action protest in Trafalgar Square. So on the very day that Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is due to prescribe Palestine Action as a terror organisation, by the looks of it, hundreds of people have descended on Trafalgar Square to show their support, lend their support to that criminal organisation.
Well, we'll be getting to those live pictures of that protest very shortly indeed. But in the meantime, here are your very latest news headlines with Tatiana.
Tom, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories. The Israeli Defence Forces have said more missiles have been launched from Iran towards Israel. Approximately 15 Iranian missiles were launched in the latest wave of attacks. That's as President Trump has hailed bullseye strikes on Iran. He's now floated the possibility of leadership change in Iran hours after his team said replacing the regime was not the aim of the US strikes over the weekend. Mr. Trump says those attacks caused monumental damage to Iran's nuclear sites, while Iran has vowed a decisive response. Israel's military says it's launched a new attack on access routes to Iran's Fordo nuclear site today. Sir Keir Starmer's warned there's a risk of the Middle East crisis spiralling beyond the region. Downing Street says the US president and Sir Keir agreed Tehran must not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon and called for Iran to return to negotiations. Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge spoke to GB News.
Just not clear what he actually thinks of the attacks. If you look at the language, he's talking about, recognising the action has happened, that he's spoken to the president. Does he actually support the actual military action? Because, let's be clear, lots of people say, lots of politicians in this country, lots of our allies, quite rightly, and it's important that they do, they recognise that Iran can't be allowed to have a military nuclear programme. But at the same time, it's not clear what the action is that they would take to deal with that.
Metropolitan Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley has expressed his shock and frustration at a protest being held today in support of Palestine Action, which will be prescribed as an organised extremist criminal group by the Home Secretary today. At least 2 people have been arrested at the protest, as we know it. On Friday, Palestine Action activists broke into RAF Brize Norton in Oxfordshire and sprayed 2 military planes with red paint in protest of the UK's support of Israel over the war in Gaza. The Chancellor has said that was unacceptable. Lowering energy costs for thousands of businesses by scrapping green levies will form a central part of the government's new 10-year industrial strategy. The plan, which may slash energy bills by up to 25% for more than 7,000 UK businesses, is set to be unveiled today alongside other measures hoped to boost growth. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer called the industrial strategy a turning point for Britain's economy by supporting key industries where there is potential for growth. Acting Shadow Energy Secretary Andrew Bowie criticised those plans, saying the UK needs a serious approach to energy policy. Elsewhere, a man has been charged with the murder of a woman found fatally stabbed after a gas explosion at her home in North London. 44-year-old Clifton George was also charged with arson with intent to endanger life after 36-year-old Annabelle Rook was found fatally injured in Stoke Newington just before 5 a.m. last Tuesday. Mr. George, who was found with slash injuries, appears in court today. That says a West Yorkshire police officer who had been reported missing has now been found dead, according to the force. Charlie Mitchell, a 26-year-old patrol officer from Halifax, was reported missing from his home in Leeds on Saturday. West Yorkshire Police said officers searching St Aidan's Nature Reserve near Leeds found his body yesterday in the early hours of the morning. Mr Mitchell's death is not being treated as suspicious. And the mass rollout of weight loss jabs on the NHS in England will begin today as GPs are allowed to prescribe the drugs for the first time. Around 220,000 people with greatest need are expected to receive Mounjaro through the NHS over the next 3 years. It's an anti-diabetic drug which lowers blood sugar levels and slows down how quickly food is digested. From today, GPs in England will be allowed to prescribe Mounjaro to severely obese people who also suffer from a range of other health problems. The medicine makes you feel fuller, so you eat less. In clinical trials, people taking it lost 20% of their body weight. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3402 and 1.1684 euros. The price of gold is £2,511 and 96 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,779 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 1. Now, the Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, has expressed his shock and frustration at a protest being held today in support of Palestine Action, which he's been describing as an organised extremist criminal group.
Well, here we are. Here are live scenes from Trafalgar Square. As you can see, there's quite the police presence, a huge amount of people now congregating there. And, of course, this comes as Palestine Action is set to be prescribed today as a terrorist organisation after activists from the group broke into RAF Brize Norton and sprayed 2 military planes with red paint in protest, apparently, at the UK's support for Israel over the war in Gaza.
Now, there's a heavy police presence, of course, and there have already reportedly been 1 or 2 arrests. I think we were seeing the aftermath of one such arrest on our screen right there. But let's go straight to the action, where our reporter Adam Cherry is in the thick of it for us.
Hello, guys. Yeah, you're right. There have been several arrests already. It's hard to tell how many. I think there might even be one happening behind me now, but obviously there's such a scrum here, it's really hard to see. And what happens is you hear the shame on you, the crowd sort of swarms around the arrest being made, and the police escort them away. If you're watching on television, they escort them down the road that we're facing now. And in the last sort of 10 minutes or so, more police have arrived, including some you're seeing on your screens at the moment. That usual sea of Palestine flags, but a lot of the signs here say defend the right to protest, obviously in response to the Palestine Action prescription, which which is expected to happen later today. This group has to disperse by 3 o'clock, according to orders, or in accordance with orders from the Metropolitan Police. They're also not allowed to protest directly outside of Parliament. There's an exclusion zone there, hence why they've sort of been kettled off into this area to the side of Trafalgar Square. But as I say, more police arriving in the last few minutes, more arrests, and I would say it's about, I can't give you a precise number, but I've seen 3, maybe perhaps a 4th happening here at the moment. But as we understand more, and we'll bring that to you throughout the next couple of hours. As I say, it's supposed to end by 3 o'clock. There's quite a large crowd here now. We'll see if they follow those instructions.
OK, well, Adam Cherry, thank you very much indeed for bringing us the latest and for being there for us at Trafalgar Square. It did look like, to begin with, that only a few had turned up, but as you can see, those crowds are growing, the flags are being waved, and there's a huge police presence there now as well. I don't know if you could see there whether there were any counter protesters, but perhaps that will also be there in the mix.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Clearly, there have been a lot of police crashes already, but the question really, is it right to prescribe Palestine Action as a terror group? Or would it be an attack on the fundamental freedoms of this country, the freedom to protest, the freedom to speak out? Well, to debate this, we're joined by the former Met Police detective Mike Neville and the human rights activist Peter Tatchell. OK, Mike, we're going to start with you. Why should this organisation be proscribed as a terror organisation?
Well, I think it's one thing to protest, and we don't want to live in any country where there's not a right to protest. And it's acceptable, I suppose, to target private arms dealers and things like that. And even as a former police officer, I suppose it's acceptable to have a fight with the police. But where it comes, the line is crossed, is when you attack our armed forces, when you invade an RAF base and you damage capability to defend this nation, at a time when we're really faced with global conflict in Ukraine and then Iran and all other places across the world. That is a step across the line, and that's why I think they should be prescribed as a terrorist organisation.
OK, well, let's throw that to Peter. Why wouldn't you want this criminal group to be prescribed? Peter, are you there? OK, we're just going to wait for Peter to come back because there's just his connection's just gone for a little bit there. But Peter, why wouldn't you want this criminal group not to be prescribed?
To ban Palestine Action would be to put them on the same legal footing as Hamas and Al-Qaeda, clearly monstrous terrorist organizations. Whatever you think about Palestine Action, they do not attack and harm people. They are a non-violent, peaceful protester. And their action involved spray painting some RAF planes. You can't equate spray painting a plane with a terrorist outrage that kills hundreds of innocent people. So it's complete overreach, and Palestine Action rightly says they are seeking to uphold international human rights law, which Britain has signed. They are seeking to prevent the mass indiscriminate killing of Gazan civilians by Israel, which is a war crime under international law. So they are upholders of the law, but they're using these methods to draw attention to Britain's collusion with Israel. And we have to be honest here, Britain is colluding with Israel on logistics and technical support, and that makes us colluding with war crimes and crimes against humanity.
I just want to draw your attention to what we're seeing on our screens right now. Next to a line of police officers is a protester who has dressed up as a victim of a Nazi concentration camp in the sort of striped pyjamas that we're all familiar Auschwitz victims were forced to wear. But in place of a Star of David, as the victims in Auschwitz had sewn onto their uniforms, this particular protester has sewn a crescent moon, a symbol of Islam, holding a sign there saying, "We are all Palestine Action." Just to both you, Mike and Peter, I just want your reaction to this fairly provocative and rather extreme statement here, evoking the Holocaust at this particular protest. To you, Mike, first.
I think it's absolutely vile. I mean, I know so many Jewish friends who won't even travel into central London, particularly on the Saturdays when the Palestinian marches are taking place. And I just think it shows the depths that these people will go to. I think it's a disgrace, it's an outrage to bring the Holocaust into this. 6 million Jews lost in the Second World War. It just shows the depths of depravity these people clamber into.
Peter?
Well, I don't think you can damn the whole movement on the basis of what one person does. You know, the vast majority.
I haven't seen anyone go up to this protester and say, you know, maybe you should, you know, not be involved in this. They're all happy to stand by this person.
Clearly, the protester is standing apart from everyone else. I'm not too sure the reason why, but we can't judge. We're not there. We don't know the situation. I think the focus has to be on the fact that Britain is supplying military logistics and support to Israel, which the United Nations have said is acting in ways that is killing thousands, tens of thousands of innocent Palestinian civilians in Gaza, including an estimated 15,000
children.
children.
So, Peter, if it was a cause that you didn't believe in, would you be happy for the group to be prescribed?
No, I oppose prescription, except in the most extreme instances. You know, prescription should be reserved for extreme terrorist organizations, whether on the left or the right. But it should not
There's always
apply.
going to be a range, though, isn't there? There's always going to be a range. Some terrorist groups are responsible for more deaths than others. Some terror groups are more successful at others at terrorising. This is a group that has had over 356 direct actions since 2020 at UK defence and tech sites. £55 million in damage estimated, 30 million in facility losses, 25 million from recent aircraft engine damage. That could have been very dangerous indeed. Drone factory occupations, they've chained themselves to facilities. They've been arrested over plotting to disrupt the London Stock Exchange. They spray painted the Balfour portrait at Cambridge Trinity College. Surely tougher action needs to happen, if not prescription, Peter.
Well, these people in Palestine Action are motivated by high moral principles to stop genocide, to uphold international human rights law. I am sure that they are prepared to pay the price for their illegal actions because they're following their conscience in the tradition of Gandhi and Martin Luther King.
Okay,
they
Mike
broke
Neville,
the law.
They broke
the law and were prepared to pay the price, and so are these protesters. And I think their moral stand is laudable.
The means justify the end justifies the cause justifies the means here, Mike. You know, if the cause is moral enough in your view, then the action is fine.
It's a questionable thing for everybody, but as I said, neither Gandhi nor Martin Luther King attacked the armed forces of their country, and this is where the line was crossed. The many incidents that you outlined there about chaining themselves to railings and damaging property belonging to defence producers of weapons and things, that's one thing. But they have attacked a weekend when, you know, the bombing of Iran was going on. We might have needed those aircraft to go to Cyprus to work with our allies in the United States. To attack our armed forces is a good reason to prescribe this organisation.
But it wasn't an attack on the armed forces. Palestine Action has no beef with the armed forces per se. It is the use of the armed forces to collude with and assist Israeli war crimes. That's the issue, and it's against international law.
But
we are
Peter, the RAF
our own
Voyager,
international human rights law.
The RAF Voyager aircraft that were damaged in this action had not been used in any sort of offensive action over Israel or Gaza. These are refuelling planes that have absolutely zilch to do with whether the UK is involved with Israel or otherwise. And the millions upon millions of pounds of damage that was done to them is a clear and present criminal act. And I suppose this conversation gets tied up with this word terrorist. Perhaps we should leave that to one side. There is a series of groups, there are a series of groups that exist in this country that seem to exist only to commit criminal action, to smash windows, to break military hardware, to cause millions upon millions of pounds of damage. I mean, how can these organisations that are explicitly set up to do illegal things exist legally?
Well, you know, we have our laws, our right to protest, and people who do those acts They're prepared to pay the price because they believe so strongly that war crimes and genocide must be stopped. And those planes, those refueling planes, I can't guarantee it, but I suspect they have been involved in refueling British aircraft used to aid and abet Israel's war crimes in Gaza.
Well, you don't know that. Peter Tatchell, thank you very much indeed. And Mike Neville, former Met Police detective, thank you very much for that back and forth. It's just interesting, isn't it, Tom, that you never see these protesters coming out against human rights abuses by the Iranian regime, for example. You don't see them coming out against human rights abuses perpetrated by Hamas either, or Hezbollah and the like. It's very much always Israel, the devil.
The place that does actually lock up Muslims and force them into forced labour is China.
Yep.
The Uyghur Muslims in China have had their heads shaved and put into camps and been chained together, but you don't see anyone standing in striped pyjamas in Trafalgar Square protesting that. You only see them protesting a democratic country in the Middle East that is responding to an invasion it suffered in 2023.
Yeah, well, it's worth pointing out, isn't it, Tom? Well, let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Nikki says useful idiots. That's that. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. A record 50,000 migrants are now waiting to appeal their rejected asylum claims while continuing to be put up in hotels by the British taxpayer. Do we need to rethink the appeals process?
Reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation, and to get to a negotiated outcome.
Yes, after the break, terror fears grow in Britain as Iran pledges payback on the United States and its allies after the action on their nuclear infrastructure.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 24 minutes past 1 now. Over the weekend, the United States absolutely hammered 3 of Iran's main nuclear sites with airstrikes, with Donald Trump warning Tehran that retaliation would be the worst mistake they've ever made.
Yes, the US president also claimed the strikes caused monumental damage to Iran's nuclear facilities and even appeared to agitate for new leadership in the country in a Truth Social post that he wrote.
However, the Iranian regime appears defiant, telling Trump that he may have been the one to start the war, but they will be the ones to end it.
OK, well, let's go to our political editor, Christopher Hope, for some of the political fallout over this. Christopher, I'm not sure the public are clear on what the government's position in all of this is. They don't appear to be opposing the action, but neither do they appear to be supporting it.
Yeah, that's right, Tom and Emily. I've been in a briefing within the past hour with the PM's spokesman. It's very clear that we are definitely bystanders to what's going on. Of course, the NATO summit starts tomorrow and Wednesday in The Hague, and the PM should be there, probably with Donald Trump. But we'll wait and see how that plays out. But we are told by the number 10 this lunchtime they see Iran as a threat. We are prioritising as a country a diplomatic solution and taking the temperature down. The idea that this is a benign dictatorship in Iran is wrong. We want to see Iran back on the negotiating table. But given what the PM said last week, it seems that many people in government, let alone us, were caught by surprise by those bombing raids late on Saturday night. I've got to say also, MPs were probably surprised because the PM will not be appearing today, we understand, to defend what's going on and the UK's approach to what's going on in Iran and Israel. Also, he won't be there to give a statement on the G7. This is unusual. Normally we have the Prime Minister in Parliament giving statements, talking to MPs, answering questions. We're told he has other things to do, and that is surprising, I think, given the gravity of where we are.
Yeah, hugely significant goings-on, of course, but we simply don't know what's going to happen next. What do we understand about how much communication there actually is going on between Downing Street, where you are, and the White House? I mean, if the Americans were to carry out another surprise attack, would we be in the loop?
Well, the answer is I'm sure we would be. But the answer is also, I don't know, because that kind of level of a special relationship, they won't tell us that. What we do know is what's happening on the outside. We know that the government is looking at pulling together preparations to transport what they call vulnerable British nationals out of Israel. So it looks like the first of those flights removing Brits from Israel is starting shortly. This crisis is not getting anywhere dialed down. If anything, it's dialing up as we wait for what Iran does next.
And did we hear any thoughts from the government, from number 10, on what's going on in Trafalgar Square at the moment, the Palestine Action protests?
We're expecting to hear a statement from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, in the House of Commons about prescribing this group, Palestine Action. And number 10 says to us, we keep a list of prescribed terrorist organisations on file, but that will be coming very soon, probably in the House of Commons later today, Emily.
OK, great. Thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope there, our political editor outside Downing Street.
Well, here to tell us more is our Home and Security editor, Mark White, because, Mark, ambiguity, really, in terms of the success of this mission. Clearly, a lot of damage done, but we don't know how much of Iran's nuclear capability has actually been degraded.
No, we have heard from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the United Nations Atomic Watchdog, that has said that they believe that there has been significant damage at the Natanz and at the Isfahan nuclear facilities. However, that deeply embedded nuclear complex at Fordo, they just don't know. They don't have... the Americans certainly don't have a battle damage assessment really to tell them, especially what's happened deep down into that facility. The Iranians say that it's not that badly damaged. There are satellite photos that certainly show that the entrances and exits have been completely pulverised, and thousands of tons of rock have come down blocking those entrances, which effectively render that facility unusable for the moment. We know that the Israelis bombed the sort of key access routes into the facility again this morning, presumably to stop any kind of efforts to dig out that facility once more by the Iranians. And we still don't know what's happened to some of the nuclear material, amid some reports that the Iranians may have removed some of the enriched uranium within recent days before these strikes took place, because they have been sort of pushing out messages on state TV and on their social media suggesting the game's not up.
The words regime change are very worrying to a lot of people. The talk from the President of the United States saying that is the hope, presumably, or at least questioning that. A lot of Iranian people do want regime change, but would question whether it should come from the people themselves, or what role the United States or the West should play in such a thing.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting points on this. Obviously, the talk of regime change potentially from the US perspective came in this Truth Social comment from Donald Trump. We don't know how much he was just kind of stirring the pot there, but saying, why not make Iran great again? But I don't see him swapping his MAGA cap for a MIGA cap anytime soon. If he does, then maybe the Iranians should really be worried. But interestingly, there has been some very significant strikes on the Iranian capital, Tehran, and other locations across Iran today, but particularly in Tehran. And we're showing you images of Israel there. That's the Fordow nuclear site. But if we've got some of the images of the strikes on Iran, that would be useful, because according to the Israeli Defense Forces, there you go, they have gone after very significant targets that are linked to the regime within Tehran, particularly, they say, linked to the suppression of Iranian people, the state apparatus that operates across Tehran there, including one of the prisons in there where there are hundreds of those sort of political activists who are jailed in, for crimes against the state. So interesting to see what they're doing. It's clear that Israel wants to try and sow as much discord as it can across Iran and give people the opportunity perhaps to rise up.
An almost artificial storming of the Bastille, getting those political prisoners, perhaps breaking down the doors so those political prisoners rush out and...
You say that. They're very interesting. There's an image. We don't know how authentic it is, but it's being shared very widely at the moment of the doors to that prison being blown apart by a missile strike.
Wow, OK, Mark White, thank you very much indeed, our Home and Security Editor. Now, before we move on, in the last hour, we spoke about Bournemouth's much-loved air show being scrapped after the Lib Dem-run council said it was too pricey and too polluting. Well, Councillor Millie Earle, the leader of the council, has reached out to say, along with other councils, ours is in a challenging financial situation, which is why the Bournemouth Air Festival in 2024 was to be the last council-funded air show. We remain invested in the cultural future of our beautiful area and are continuing to work with our partners and support others where we can to help deliver a vibrant economy for residents and visitors, with events such as the Bay Run, Arts by the Sea Festival and Christmas in Bournemouth planned.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's much more coming up on today's programme. Indeed, from today, GPs can prescribe weight loss drugs to almost 250,000 people across England. Is this the end of fat as we know it? Well, we'll be speaking to one woman who wishes the jabs were available to her before she lost 12 stone by invasive surgery.
But after the break, a record 50,000 migrants now waiting to appeal their rejected asylum claims while continuing to be put up in hotels paid for by the British taxpayer. Do we need to rethink this appeals process? That's next after your headlines.
Emily, thank you. The headlines at 1:30. Israel's launched a new attack on access routes to Iran's Fordo nuclear site today as President Trump has hailed bullseye strikes on Iran. Here's the US Defense Secretary.
As the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will demonstrate, it was an incredible and overwhelming success.
Elsewhere, lowering energy costs for thousands of businesses by scrapping green levies will form a central part of the government's new 10-year industrial strategy. That plan's been unveiled today. A man's been charged with the murder of Annabelle Rook, found fatally stabbed after a gas explosion at her home in North London. A West Yorkshire police officer, Charlie Mitchell, who'd been reported missing, has now been found dead. And the mass rollout of weight loss jabs on the NHS in England will begin today as GPs are allowed to prescribe the drugs for the first time. And those are the latest headlines for now. More at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A fresher feel for most today, certainly compared to much of last week. Bright and breezy, many places dry with some sunny spells, but there are a few showers around across the northwest, close to this area of low pressure. That's what's changed the weather. The winds now coming in from the west, a fresher feel from the Atlantic. Some wet weather across the Northern Isles. That'll continue on and off through the day today. The showers will come and go across western Scotland. The odd shower elsewhere, northwest England, North Wales may be catching one, but many places dry, as I said, bright and breezy. That breeze is, though, quite noticeable, bringing that fresher feel. Temperatures only in the teens in many western areas, but still quite warm across the southeast, 23, 24 degrees Celsius likely here. As we go through the night, we will start to see a change. Things a bit damp in Shetland, but some cloud is gathering out west. But a fine evening nonetheless for East Anglia and the southeast. Temperatures staying in the 20s here, but the clouds steadily increasing from the west, so Northern Ireland seeing the clouds starting to thicken. Still a few showers for the evening across the far north of England and coming in at times across Scotland, most frequent over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but still some could get through the central belt. And then eyes out west as that thickening cloud in Northern Ireland starts to produce some damp conditions during the evening. Rain and drizzle pushing in across Northern Ireland by midnight. And then that zone of rain spreads into southern Scotland, northern England, north and west Wales. And some of it could be on the heavy side, particularly through the early hours over North Wales and northwest England. Will be a pretty warm night, with temperatures holding up in the mid-teens. Staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast. And might even start sunny here early on Tuesday, but the cloud will increase pretty rapidly. A dull, damp morning for northwest England, North Wales, southwest Scotland. The rain on and off here through much of the day. It does turn a bit brighter, and with some sunny spells across the Midlands and eastern England, it'll feel pretty warm and humid here with temperatures in the mid-20s. Elsewhere again, high teens or low 20s.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A92 Tay Road Bridge, drivers should be cautious due to high winds, with speed limited to 30 miles per hour and closure to double-deck vehicles. In Somerset, congestion on the A33 westbound from a broken-down vehicle is causing delays. In West Sussex, expect a 10-minute delay on the A27 westbound. Resurfacing on the A44 from Langerig to Troderalt requires diversions. And on the trains, services on South Western Railway and Southern are disrupted with no trains running between Chichester and Havant and through Redhill. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 1, and we're going to bring you some breaking news now. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has said she has decided to prescribe Palestine action and will lay an order before Parliament next week, which, if passed, will make membership and support for this group illegal.
Yes, well, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said she's decided to prescribe this group. And this will all happen before Parliament next week. As you could see there, that was some live footage from Trafalgar Square. So on the very same day that Yvette Cooper has released this written statement to prescribe this organisation next week, she'll lay it before Parliament, there are hundreds of people out on the streets of central London protesting in favour of Palestine action. And as we've seen, there have been a number of arrests so far. Our reporter there, Adam Cherry, has seen those taking place. And there are some sights, aren't there, Tom?
Crucially, this is an order laid before Parliament. This is not within the gift of the Home Secretary or the Prime Minister. This is legislation. So there will have to be a vote in Parliament. We'll be able to see which members of Parliament are in favour of prescribing this group and which members of Parliament are against prescribing this group.
Well, that'll be very interesting, won't it? Particularly on the Labour side, where there is a difference of opinion depending on where you are in that party.
And indeed, there are plenty of Labour MPs who have very, very slim majorities where people stood in the election, independent candidates stood in the election, known collectively as the Gaza Independents. There are lots of MPs who barely got in by the skin of their teeth, people like Jess Phillips, people like Wes Streeting.
Yep.
And indeed, there were other Labour members of Parliament, like John Ashworth, who were thought to be safe as houses, but actually lost to Gaza independence. So could this be a very difficult moment for the Labour Party? And will some people in various seats, depending on their demographic that they represent, be minded to vote for, vote against, or even abstain?
That's a very, very good point. It could be that cabinet ministers find this very awkward indeed. It's interesting to note that Yvette Cooper has, in her longer written statement that she's released, essentially detailed all the different ways in which this group have orchestrated, in her words, a nationwide campaign of direct criminal action against businesses and institutions, including key national infrastructure and defence firms that provide services and supplies to support Ukraine, NATO, Five Eyes allies and the UK defence enterprise. She goes on to list all the various criminal activities to justify this decision. So there you go, live pictures from Trafalgar Square. We'll bring you more throughout the show.
Sticking with Home Affairs, though, over 50,000 migrants are still in the UK, mainly in hotels, despite having their asylum claims rejected.
Yeah, so essentially a huge backlog in the appeals process means that the appeals are taking more than a year. And, of course, at the same time, they need to be put up somewhere and likely in very expensive hotels.
Well, critics say it's a broken system that rewards delay and puts pressure on taxpayers.
Well, we're joined by Reform Councillor for Datchet, Hotron and Wraysbury, David Buckley. David, is this an issue in your patch?
Well, it has been an issue in our patch. We actually had the asylum seekers removed from our hotel about 2 weeks ago. But that's on the second time they've been in our Datchet hotel over the last 3 years, previously by the Conservative leadership and now by the Labour leadership. But yes, it is something that obviously has affected us and may affect us again.
A lot of people will be shocked to hear that someone can have their asylum application rejected and still be living at the taxpayer's expense for months, sometimes even years. And this despite our very high acceptance rate of people in the first place. Even those who are rejected stay here.
Well, I think at that point, I think I remember statistics in 2023 of 150,000 asylum seekers waiting for processing, and they were only processing at 15,000 a year then, and that would have taken 10 years to process the people that are already here, let alone the number have come since that time. So I think there's a lot of massaging the figures by the government. I do not believe the figures, the 50,000 on appeal, plus at least 150,000 that have not even gone through the process yet. So you're looking at over 200,000 people, maybe a lot more, who are living at taxpayers' expense.
Now, David, presumably you're a new councillor for your area. Have you begun to get a good picture of just how much housing is an issue in the area that you represent? Because this is one of the difficulties, isn't it? There's a lot of young families, there's a lot of veterans, there's a lot of all sorts of different people who are struggling to find housing at a reasonable price or struggling to find social housing. And then they see people who've crossed the channel or come here illegally being put up in hotels for endless amounts of time. And it breeds resentment, doesn't it, David?
Oh, absolutely. We had a housing waiting list 3 years ago of around about 3,500, 4,000 people. And that's without taking in sofa surfers or anyone else who's living with family or friends from a day to day. Our local council has built 6 council houses in the last 10 years. 6. We've got 150,000 people living in our borough.
6 council houses in the entire borough?
In 10 years.
In 10 years?
In 10 years.
Right, OK.
So the whole thing needs re-looking at. For instance, the government could refinance councils just to build council housing, just social housing. Exclude, obviously, new people coming into the country. If you just take that and try and deal with our existing issue, they can finance the councils and the councils can borrow money and repay back this money over long-term loans. It's not a taxpayer's expense. It will actually be paid back by the local councils. They've got the land. They've got the land to build on these. And we could solve our social housing for our families and local people so they could live locally overnight.
Although we have one of the highest levels of social housing anywhere in the OECD. We're comfortably in the top 10. I think we used to be in the top 5. One of the reasons that we have such a social housing crisis is there isn't enough market rate housing. So more people are pushed into needing the social housing. I think too often in this conversation we talk about how much subsidised housing we can make. If we allowed the private sector to build a lot more private housing, there wouldn't be quite so many people who needed the social housing in the first place.
Well, Tom, I don't want to dispute your figures. I get where you're coming from. I think that's more of an assumption. I think the problem is that we do need social housing because if you look at the average wage and living wage in this country, if you live in the southeast, that living wage is something like around about £12 an hour. You need £50,000, £60,000 a year just to live. That's not going out for a coffee. That's not going out for a meal every week. That's just to live in the southeast. Your average rent is £2,500 a month.
David, I think you and I are in violent agreement. What I'm saying is the rent should be lower and you do that by having more housing.
You can only have that with social housing.
No, you can have that by expanding the supply of private housing.
Then you'd only get that if the housing price goes down, because if your average house price is 500,000... Yeah, exactly. But the average house price is 500,000 and you want a 5% yield on your return, which you would want, you're going to need 30,000 a year in rental income. Well, the average person can't afford that. That's £3,000 a month. So it's the economics. It goes back to the housing bubble that the government's year after year after year. It's a big story, that one, Tom.
Well, David, at least we can all agree that we need more housing.
Yeah.
We need more housing. David Buckley, thank you very much indeed. Reform Councillor for Datchet, Hopton and Wraysbury.
Absolutely. Now, we must say that the Home Office have been in touch and they said, we inherited an asylum system under exceptional pressure and we make no apologies for taking the necessary and immediate action to restore order, increasing asylum decision-making and returning nearly 30,000 people with no right to be here.
That's that. If you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Following a peak in the temperatures across the western Mediterranean in the last few days, it is now turning fresher. There are a few showers to watch out for, particularly across areas of Iberia. Generally, though, further east, it's high pressure in charge, and that's allowing the heat to also transfer eastwards. Particularly parts of northern Italy into the Balkans will see those temperatures climbing, but the high pressure also means there'll be plentiful amounts of sunshine for these regions right throughout the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's been a long old time now. Other missing cases. How do we prioritise that, despite, obviously, Madeleine McCann being one of the most high-profile mysteries of my lifetime, for sure. I think I think you're right to point out, though, that if there is even the remotest of chances that... because sometimes an individual case can symbolise and mean something more in the public consciousness than in isolation. And I think this is such a case. It's something that I think people still deeply care about. So if there's any remote chance, I think they've got to go for it.
Well, let's hope something is found. These searches, as we know, are going to continue until Friday, unless, of course, fresh evidence is found, in which case they will continue.
I take it all sort of quite personally because we holidayed in the area. I had children the same age at the time, and there used to be posters in the airport, you know, asking, have you seen this girl and whatever. And my kids were very aware of it, you know, and you'd point out and talk about it and whatever. So I often think it could have been as easy one of my children involved in all of this, and you do take it personally.
And I think a lot of people in the country would feel that way. It's in the nation's psyche, isn't it, Madeleine McCann?
Yeah.
We all know her, we know her face, we feel as though we know her as a little girl. I think everybody would like to have answers as to what happened to her.
Right, OK, so the Portuguese police are saying about this, the search warrant was issued by the Public Prosecutor's Office in Germany, which is conducting preliminary proceedings against a German citizen suspected of the murder of a British citizen, Madeleine Beth McCann.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:50. Now, from today, GPs in England will begin prescribing weight loss jabs like Mounjaro to those with severe obesity and related health issues.
Well, the move could benefit 250,000 people over the next 3 years. Critics, however, warn that GPs are already overstretched and the jabs must be part of wider weight loss support.
Well, joining us to discuss this is actor and commentator Tina Malone. Tina, thank you very much indeed. Now, you've been through your own weight loss journey. So how do you feel about this change?
Oh, I'm terribly sorry, Tina. I think we've got a problem with your microphone. We'll try and bring you back in just one...
Oh,
we can hear you now. Do go ahead.
Oh, right, OK. Yeah, I think it should be done because I know it's going to cost a lot of money. But let's bear in mind, we give a lot of money to other things that really aren't to do with... you know, looking after the health of the people in this country primarily. And I think in the long term, you have to think that people are going to cost much more when it comes to blindness, amputees, all the diseases related to obesity. Now, I was morbidly and clinically obese. I've lost 12 stone, 4 pounds. I had a gastric band, which was incredible when I came out of Celebrity Big Brother. But you have to remember that it is very important that you start things. Prevention is better than cure. And I think we need to tackle this head on. If it were other addictions and food, we have, make no bones about it, is an addiction. It's a crutch. Nobody wakes up saying, I want to be fat. So it's something that I welcome for people, especially who can't afford weight loss surgery.
Yeah, and I think isn't this incredible? There are so many people who have had invasive surgery, gastric bands over the last 20, 30 years, which must be an incredibly traumatic thing to go through. I mean, any surgery is. The fact that we can now basically get the same effect with just a simple injection. I mean, this is a modern marvel, a modern miracle.
OK, well, it looks like we're struggling with that line again for some reason. Tina, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, yeah.
OK. I think really we need to think about 10 years ago, we didn't have these options. They weren't available. And, you know, it's progressive. And in the end, it will start by paying a lot of money for it, GPs having to pay for it and subsidised by the government, etc. But in the long term, it will bring the bill down. And let's face it, obesity is a crisis. I'm not being funny. You don't need to be a brain surgeon to know the difference between a stick of celery and a cream cake. But it's
yeah, no, absolutely, Tina, you're absolutely right. Sadly, we've run to the end of the hour, but thank you so much for sharing your experience as well, Tina Malone there. This is Good Afternoon Britain. Do not go anywhere. Supporters of Palestine Action are descended on central London. We'll bring you the very latest next.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A fresher feel for most today, certainly compared to much of last week. Bright and breezy, many places dry with some sunny spells, but there are a few showers around across the northwest, close to this area of low pressure. That's what's changed the weather. The winds now coming in from the west, a fresher feel from the Atlantic. Some wet weather across the Northern Isles. That'll continue on and off through the day today. The showers will come and go across western Scotland. The odd shower elsewhere, northwest England, North Wales may be catching one, but many places dry, as I said, bright and breezy. That breeze is, though, quite noticeable, bringing that fresher feel. Temperatures only in the teens in many western areas, but still quite warm across the southeast, 23, 24 degrees Celsius likely here. As we go through the night, we will start to see a change. Stays a bit damp in Shetland, but some cloud is gathering out west. But a fine evening nonetheless for East Anglia and the southeast. Temperatures staying in the 20s here, but the clouds steadily increasing from the west, so Northern Ireland seeing the clouds starting to thicken. Still a few showers for the evening across the far north of England, and coming in at times across Scotland, most frequent over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but still some could get through the central belt. And then eyes out west as that thickening cloud in Northern Ireland starts to produce some damp conditions during the evening. Rain and drizzle pushing in across Northern Ireland by midnight, and then that zone of rain spreads into southern Scotland, northern England, north and west Wales. And some of it could be on the heavy side, particularly through the early hours over North Wales and northwest England. Will be a pretty warm night, with temperatures holding up in the mid-teens. Staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast. And might even start sunny here early on Tuesday, but the cloud will increase pretty rapidly. A dull, damp morning for northwest England, North Wales, southwest Scotland. The rain on and off here through much of the day. It does turn a bit brighter, and with some sunny spells across the Midlands and eastern England, it'll feel pretty warm and humid here with temperatures in the mid-20s. Elsewhere again, high teens or low 20s.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd of June. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, supporters of Palestine Action descend on central London as the Home Secretary prepares to prescribe the group as a terror organisation. Well, the Met Police Chief says he is shocked and frustrated that this rally is going ahead.
Well, the Metropolitan Police say they have arrested 3 people so far, 20 or so protesters blocking the road, and increased police presence. More shortly from this protest live on GB News.
I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation, and to get to a negotiated outcome.
OK, that's Keir Starmer, but terror fears grow in Britain as Iran pledges payback on the United States and its allies after the attack on their nuclear infrastructure.
Well, intense fire between Iran and Israel again today, with Israel in particular targeting regime targets in the capital, Tehran.
Elsewhere, Nigel Farage unveils Reform UK's Robin Hood plan to unite the rich and poor and entice those non-doms back to the UK. But will it work?
So why do we bother? Because the people next door do nothing, and they're pretty much as well off as we are.
Where distressing scenes from the Greek island of Chios as holidaymakers are forced to flee for their lives amid the flames.
And the latest victim of silly season madness has been claimed. Yes, classic nursery rhymes have been slapped with bonkers trigger warnings for children. Stay tuned to find out why 3 Little Piggies is now too terrifying for your toddler.
Now, we were talking about the BBC presenter who decided to correct the autocue from pregnant people to pregnant women. Now, Tom just corrected the autocue there. He refused to read out the word woke there. Yeah, why? You didn't think it was fitting?
I don't like the word woke, mainly because, and it might sound surprising to people that are very involved in politics, because it's used all the time. Most people in Britain don't know what it means.
Everyone knows what it means.
No, genuinely, look at the opinion polling.
Well, no one can write down what it means.
It is a shocking proportion of people that think that don't know what it means. I think of it as an American imported word. I don't think it applies to Britain. I prefer to use political correctness or sort of words that I think
That's not the same
are more
thing.
indigenous to this country.
No, because the thing is, people don't know what it means on paper. Like, they can't write down the definition or tell you the definition. It's one of those questions that people hate being asked. So what exactly do you mean by woke? But everyone knows it when they see it. Everyone knows it when they see it.
I think
that's a bit woke, you know? You're a bit woke sometimes, aren't you?
But it's really easy to get sort of into this in-group where, OK, you're using this word all the time and then you're sort of talking this language. But for someone that doesn't spend their time looking at politics, they hear these words like woke and it can be a bit alienating and it can be just sort of, what on earth is this? I think most normal people who don't spend their time looking at sort of culture war issues...
I don't know, our viewers and listeners, I think they know what woke means.
Only if they
need to dumb it down for them.
Only if they're absolutely regular listeners.
Which they all are.
No, I hope we're reaching out to people who might just stumble upon the channel.
Yeah,
and,
true. You know, when they're flicking through the other boring news channels.
But also, it's just such an American word for me.
Yeah.
I've just never really warmed to it.
Well, there is something that quite woke that Keir Starmer tweeted a little bit earlier today, which we're going to talk about in a sec. And I'll leave you hanging on that one. But let's get to the headlines.
Emily, thank you. The top stories. The Israeli Defence Forces have said more missiles have been launched from Iran towards Israel. Approximately 15 Iranian missiles were launched in the latest wave of attacks. That's as US President Donald Trump has hailed bullseye strikes on Iran. He's now floated the possibility of leadership change in Iran hours after his team said replacing the regime was not the aim of the US strikes over the weekend. Mr. Trump says those attacks caused monumental damage to Iran's nuclear sites, while Iran has vowed a decisive response. Israel's military says it's launched a new attack on access routes to Iran's Fordow nuclear site today. Sir Keir Starmer's warned there's a risk of the Middle East crisis spiralling beyond the region. Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge spoke to GB News Breakfast.
Just not clear what he actually thinks of the attacks. If you look at the language, he's talking about, recognising the action has happened, that he's spoken to the president. Does he actually support the actual military action? Because, let's be clear, lots of people say, lots of politicians in this country, lots of our allies, quite rightly, and it's important that they do, they recognise that Iran can't be allowed to have a military nuclear programme, but at the same time it's not clear what the action is that they would take to deal with that.
The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says Tehran must not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, and she says they should get back to negotiations.
I've believed for a long time that Iran should never be able to develop a nuclear weapon, and that's why the US took the action that it took at the weekend. The Prime Minister spoke to President Donald Trump on the phone last night to discuss next steps, and we all agree, the US, the UK and our allies, that Iran now needs to get back to the negotiating table and that we want to see a de-escalation, because an escalation of the conflict in the Middle East is in no one's interests.
Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says she's decided to prescribe Palestine action and will lay an order before Parliament next week. If passed, will make membership and support for the protest group illegal. That's as the Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, has expressed his shock and frustration at a protest being held today in support of Palestine action. At least 2 people have been arrested at the protest as we know it. On Friday, Palestine Action activists broke into RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire and sprayed 2 military planes with red paint in protest of the UK's support of Israel over the war in Gaza, which the Chancellor has called totally unacceptable. Plans to lower energy costs for thousands of businesses by exempting them from some green energy levies have been set out as part of the government's new 10-year industrial strategy. The plan may slash energy bills by up to 25% for more than 7,000 UK businesses. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer called the industrial strategy a turning point for Britain's economy by supporting key industries where there is potential for growth. Acting Shadow Energy Secretary Andrew Bowie criticised those plans, saying the UK needed a serious approach to energy policy. A man has been charged with the murder of a woman found fatally stabbed after a gas explosion at her home in North London. 44-year-old Clifton George was also charged with arson with intent to endanger life after 36-year-old Annabelle Rook was found fatally injured in Stoke Newington just before 5 o'clock in the morning last Tuesday. Mr. George, who was found with slash injuries, appears in court today. A West Yorkshire police officer who had been reported missing has now been found dead. Charlie Mitchell, a 26-year-old patrol officer from Halifax, was reported missing from his home in Leeds on Saturday. West Yorkshire police said officers searching St Aidan's Nature Reserve near Leeds found his body around 5:30 yesterday afternoon. The death is not being treated as suspicious. And the mass rollout of weight loss jabs on the NHS in England will begin today as GPs are allowed to prescribe the drugs for the first time. Around 220,000 people with greatest need are expected to receive Mounjaro through the NHS over the next 3 years. It's an anti-diabetic drug which lowers blood sugar levels and slows down how quickly food is digested. Well, from today, GPs in England will be allowed to prescribe Mounjaro to severely obese people who also suffer from a range of other health problems. The medicine makes you feel fuller so you can eat less, and in clinical trials, people taking it lost 20% of their body weight. Those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
What are you so happy about?
I just made a claim.
My Claim Group.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3393 and €1.1673. The price of gold is £2,511.67 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,757 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 9 minutes past 2, and the Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, has expressed his shock and frustration at a protest being held today in support of Palestine Action, the group that broke into RAF Bryce Norton last week and has been described as an organised extremist criminal group.
Yeah, so as you can see, if you're watching, the protest is very much underway, and it's right slap bang in central London in Trafalgar Square, not too far from Westminster itself. And it comes as Palestine Action is set to be prescribed now as that terror organisation. We've heard from Yvette Cooper. She's put out a written statement to that effect.
Well, let's go live to Trafalgar Square now, speak to our reporter Adam Cherry, who is on the scene for us. Adam, what's it like there?
Afternoon, guys. Yeah, it's still very loud and very busy here. I must say it does feel like it's died down a little bit since an hour ago. However, there are still some protesters sitting on the ground towards the left. Stephen, if you just want to pan to the left a bit and show the guys sitting on the ground over there. There's an increased police presence. Again, in the last hour, more police arriving. It's worth reminding everyone that this protest is supposed to disperse within the next 50 minutes. There's a dispersal order in place by the Metropolitan Police. And of course, this all comes as in the last hour or so, the Home Secretary has announced that she will prescribe Palestine Action. And actually, you can just see another encounter over there. Presumably, more arrests attempting to be made. It's very hard to tell at this point because it's so packed in here. But this is what happens every time there's an arrest. The group swarms the police and chant of "shame on you." Again, you hear familiar chants at these rallies every time. You know, free Palestine, from the river to the sea. We have heard that as well. We've also heard today, "We are all Palestine Action." Also some anti-Keir Starmer, anti-government signs as well. And as I say, it looks like at least one or two more people being escorted away by the Metropolitan Police now.
You can also see in the distance there, you can see a couple of other flags, can't you, besides the Palestine flag? You've got the Irish flag, I think that was South Africa as well. Adam? Oh, OK, we may have lost Adam for now, but as you can see, there's quite a build-up there of police officers. A number of arrests have taken place already. It did look like there was some kind of scuffle, didn't there, in Trafalgar Square?
Absolutely. According to reports, some people that were leading some of these chants have been arrested. Of course, "From the river to the sea" is seen by many people as a genocidal chant, wanting to wipe out the Jewish state in its entirety. Talking, of course, about the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. But Adam Cherry, I believe we've still got you on the line. I know it's very loud where you are, so sorry if you can't quite hear us as well as you might wish. But it does seem that there is still a pretty heavy presence of people chanting. How many arrests have you seen?
OK, well, I think Adam's struggling to hear us. We've got a man here, though, in a shirt and a maraca. also filming the occasion. So there you go, all sorts have turned up for this Palestine Action protest in the middle of the day.
Well, perhaps we can stay on these pictures, because with us in the studio is Mark White, who, of course, is our security, a home security expert, editor. Mark, what is actually the process of prescribing a group like this? What will happen?
Well, before that, let's just talk about what we're seeing on the screen here. Police moving in now to make at least 2 arrests there of a group that they are seeing clearly as being members who are orchestrating some of the violence, chasing those people around the corner. This is always a difficult part in the sort of public order operations here, because what you've got is a main body of a protest, but in addition to that, there are clearly members of that protest who are not willing to abide by any sort of restrictions put forward by the police in terms of sticking to a specific area or route. They want to sort of run free, cause a bit of chaos, go where they want to go. So you'll see police officers running back, maybe arresting those that they see are particularly trying to agitate and egg on the rest in the crowd to be unlawful. What is interesting to note, though, is, you know, in terms of a protest, yes, it's a little bit lively at times, but these are not officers who have donned their public order kit, so they've not put helmets on or anything like that. So it's not a very violent protest in that sense. It's just a little bit lively. It's people who are not willing to behave themselves. That doesn't mean that it might not descend into something that is a bit more violent, that would require the officers then either to make way for more public order trained officers to come in, or to go off and don their equipment. You can see the back of a police van there with one of those who's been detained. One of the aspects of this, the person detained there clearly wearing a covering over the face. This is another thing that actually the police can do something about, because face coverings are seen as quite provocative in terms of those who want to try to hide their identity.
No, it is fascinating how many people are wearing COVID masks. I'm sure not necessarily concerned about the spread of any aerosol-borne disease, and perhaps more about hiding their identity, which speaks volumes in and of itself. But what we're seeing here is a police line to try and contain this protest within the area it was designated.
Yeah, they don't want them to go to potentially some key buildings and be quite disruptive. So they're trying to hold them into this area of Trafalgar Square, Whitehall, where they were, and not get too far down that road. But, I mean, having covered these types of protests for many, many years and chased far too many to count down the back streets of London, what they'll often do is split up. So you might get a dozen or two running off in one direction, trying to split police resources. But what I will say about this is it's not a big protest. There's not that many people there, really. What, a couple of hundred or so that I can see, really. So, yes, people have turned out in support of it, but we're not talking about a mass movement in support of Palestine Action of hundreds of thousands of people, as we sometimes see in the protests that are actually designed to offer their support to the people of Palestine, the people of Gaza. So, yes, people have turned out. It might get a bit unruly, but the police have got it well under control so far.
It does seem a little more rowdy and a little bit more unruly than some recent protests that I happen to have walked past in that area, just with arrests, also an elevated police presence.
Yeah, listen, there are always at these protests, particularly these types of protests, your professional agitators that turn up at quite a lot of protests that want to try and gee up other members of the crowd to get involved in the sort of activity that would be more criminal in nature. I think I see the back of young Adam Cherry there from what is obviously a Press Association live shot as he's looking at the activities there. But listen, I don't think we should talk this up either, because what I'm seeing is not violent, really. A bit unruly, a bit lively at times, but thus far it, is nothing more than the kind of sort of, activity from a protest like this that the Met Police are well used to being able to contain and ensure that doesn't move towards more sort of violent protests.
I think we have some footage available of an arrest that was made not too long ago that we can just turn to for a moment. Here we go. So what's happening here, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, the police will just move in and pick off those that they see as actually being people that are maybe trying to provoke other members in the crowd to go on, or maybe they're shouting or swearing at the officers. You don't know. Every now and again, the police will move in, but often what happens, depending on the size of the crowd, is that the police will feel that it's more of a reasonable tactic to just kind of hang fire, contain the situation and not move in, because sometimes it can actually exacerbate a situation. But they will do it from time to time, depending on what people are doing in the crowd there. So clearly the police feel there's enough, and there is enough. They're in the back streets as well. There are police mobile vans full of them, able to sort of come and back up these officers. But you can see those officers, they're stood there, they're not in their public order kit. They're well in control of a situation that is a group of people that are, as I say, uncooperative, certainly, but not very violent from what I can see.
No, it looks like this is actually a very professional policing operation, that they are well trained, that they know exactly how to deal with this, that this could have got a lot worse than it is. They picked out the rabble-rousers early, and actually this is something that is now contained with that police line as well. What they are chanting, however, is "We are all Palestine Action." And Palestine Action, of course, is an organisation that the government deems criminal. It is an organisation that has broken into a secure military facility, has vandalised 2 RAF aircraft, and that's only the start of it. They've also disrupted manufacturers, parts of the sort of supply chain of our military-industrial complex, for want of a better phrase, they have damaged and gone about to, frankly, break the law time and time again.
I can read you directly from what Yvette Cooper is telling Parliament today, which is that Palestine Action's activity has increased in frequency and severity since the start of 2024, and its methods have become more aggressive, with its members demonstrating a willingness to use violence. Palestine Action, she says, has also broadened its targets from the defence industry to include financial firms, charities, universities and government buildings. Its activities meet the threshold, she says, set out in the statutory tests established under the Terrorism Act 2000. And that's why she has taken the decision to prescribe this group, which will mean doing this, going out and chanting in support of a terrorist group, will be a criminal offence under the Terrorism Act. Today it's not yet there, but once that prescription comes into law, it will be illegal to gather like this and show support for this organisation.
Clearly some commotion here, what looks like an arrest taking place, a throng of people around this arrest, potentially some outnumbered police, although a huge number of police there, so it does seem like they are able to get in and make these precise arrests, not of everyone chanting, but just of those specific sort of rabble-rousing leaders within the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're seeing are professional activists here.
They'll recognise a lot of them, won't they, at this stage?
The police know them well. They, as part of their tactics, it's all about shouting, pushing and shoving, trying to get their way down one street when that is blocked off to them, trying to get round another street, which is what you're seeing here. And every now and again, the pushing and shoving gets met with the response from the police, which is to grab, to restrain, to arrest, an individual that they think may be leading a particular group, or may have actually, as I say, potentially assaulted an officer or shouted something that constitutes a public order offence. They're well used to this. As you said before, Tom, this is professionally run and organised by the Metropolitan Police, and that's because, unlike so many other centres of population in the capital, as we see another individual being arrested here, unlike so many other cities across the country, London is an epicentre for protests. We get them from all sides of the political spectrum on a daily basis. The Met are used to this, but really what you need to calculate as you look at the images and thinking, my gosh, this is really violent, it isn't yet, because when it gets to that threshold, you will see a change in the way this operation is being conducted. You'll see these officers either donning their own public order kit or pulling back and making way for territorial support group officers, these TSG public order trained officers in their full public order kit to take on board what's happening. Well, from what I can see, there are no, for instance, objects being thrown at the officers that would necessitate them putting on the likes of the public order helmets.
And the people who were being arrested there and dragged out of the crowds and then into the back of that police van, presumably, obviously you don't want to talk about the individuals themselves, but what sort of things might they have been, might the police have seen them do? Or heard them chant, perhaps, or just know that they are agitators? What sort of thing might it be?
Well, in any situation like this where you can suspect someone of a public order offence, it can be as simple as going up to the police lines and, you know, violently pushing against that police line, the police warning you to get back, and they will warn you. They'll warn you quite a few times until eventually they have their fill of you, and they grab you and they effect an arrest. And we're seeing that again here with the group pushing forward at the police lines, and the police will probably pull someone from the lines, pull them into their group, into the police group, surround them, push the rest of the crowd back while they deal with that individual, and that's what they do. They'll pick them off one by one. It's not what you would, I wouldn't describe this as a kettling operation, in that clearly the crowd are free to go back into Trafalgar Square. They're not being surrounded by all sides, which again is a police tactic of completely containing what can be often a violent mob, containing them, trying to tire them out, eventually moving in and picking them off one by one. They're stopping them going down Whitehall, from what I can see.
Yeah.
The crowd's determined to get down that area from Trafalgar Square down into Whitehall, and that's why we're seeing the pushing and shoving. As I say, you've got professional agitators that seem to do this day in, day out.
Well, let's cross now to Adam Cherry, who is there in the throng of it all. Adam, what can you tell us there on the ground?
It's very loud, so I'll do my best. Basically, what's happened is deteriorated in the last sort of 15 minutes. Everyone's moving around to this corner here. Those watching on television will see a huge scrum of people, sort of direct confrontation between the police and some of the protesters. Another handful of arrests in the last few minutes. We've been bringing you those live pictures as it's been happening. You can see those, again, watching on television will see the police vans and a huge cordon of police officers directly in front of us now. This protest is supposed to end in the next half an hour. It's supposed to be dispersed in accordance with the rules set out by the Metropolitan Police. I have to say, it is, like I said earlier, it is slightly quieter, or at least slightly fewer people than there were maybe an hour and a half ago. But those who are still here, I would say, are much more agitated and much more confrontational. As I said, in the last few minutes, we've seen several more arrests. You can also see some protesters squatting on the floor on the road here of Trafalgar Square. And so we are just going to follow around. Steve's moving around so you can see some of those protesters now. And again, like I said, it's all happening on this corner. It's a much smaller, concentrated group of people as opposed to 90 minutes ago, like I said.
And Adam, do you have an idea of you could? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, no, I can just about hear you. It is very loud. There's a lot of drums, but I can just about hear you.
OK, Adam, I was just going to ask whether you have an idea of what sort of made things a little bit more agitated. Is it a difference of police tactic? Is it that there perhaps have been some agitators that have just recently turned up, or just one of those things that things escalate?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say because when you try and get into the scrum, it's so chaotic. It does seem like the protesters are getting more aggressive. It's worth saying there was a counter protest about half an hour, almost an hour ago now, actually, about an hour ago, of those carrying Israeli flags. They were escorted away. They're a much smaller group than the pro-Palestine group here. And again, it's also worth stressing that in the last hour or so, the Home Secretary has prescribed Palestine action, for whom there's a massive amount of support here. I've seen signs, T-shirts, banners, chants of "We are all Palestine action," and it's just a few hundred meters down the road is the Home Secretary, who's declared that the Palestine action is now a terrorist, is a proscribed organisation, and therefore it would be illegal to support them.
Yeah, and that is a crucial point. Adam, do stay there for us. I'm just going to bring in Mark White, who's with us in the studio, of course, because this announcement from the Home Secretary, this prescription order, it's not something that she can do immediately within her power. There'll need to be a vote on this in Parliament to absolutely get this set. So this could be a process that takes several days.
I'm not sure that's true. I think prescription is within. I mean, you might be right. I thought the prescription was within the purview of the Home Secretary to outlaw a particular group. But anyway, we are where we are. The Home Secretary believes that this group has crossed that threshold now in targeting these terrorists and targeting vital national infrastructure and military bases, and that's why the Home Secretary wants to move to prescribe this particular organisation, and that will mean that those turning out and very blatantly and publicly professing their support for Palestine action will be committing a criminal offence and at risk of being arrested. And being arrested and then charged, they will be charged under the Terrorism Act, which will mean they are potentially facing a jail term. So it carries with it a real severity in terms of the charges. These individuals now today, they'll be charged with a public order offence that might be, a dismissal, a fine, community service, unlikely to mean any time in prison. But once that group is prescribed, you go down the line of providing support and showing support or funding or whatever it might be for that particular group, then you are guilty of a terrorism offence, and that carries with it a much more severe sentence. So we can see, again, from the images here, it's a bit of a standoff, and it is what I see so many times with these protests. As Adam mentioned, they're sort of thinning out of the group. So you've got a lot of the perhaps well-meaning types that want to show their support for a group that they believe really has the best interests of the people of Gaza and across the the West Bank as well at heart, and they're showing their support but drifting off. And then what inevitably happens is the more hardline individuals, the professional activists that are used to going head-to-head with the police, that want to provoke a response, they stay. And so the group that are left are the group that are much more inclined to just have a go at the police, which is what we're seeing.
And the police have been criticised in the past for not necessarily enforcing the law as adequately as some people might want them to when it comes to things like prescribed groups, when it comes to things like chants that would be technically illegal. This is another group that they then have to police in a different way. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure to get right.
Well, indeed, but that's exactly what I'm not seeing, to use that double negative, today, because
another one.
You see another arrest there. We had no less a man than the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police Sir Mark Rowley, expressing his deep frustration that this protest should be going ahead today in support of a group that is going to be prescribed as a terrorist organisation, saying that it is his belief that this should not be going ahead. So there's no doubt those officers on the front line are acting with the full support of their commissioner and, of course, with the Home Secretary, because she is in the process of prescribing this group as a terrorist organisation. And Sir Mark Rowley, interestingly, and although, you know, also citing the direct action, the vandalism, the destruction that this group has been involved in, mentioned an incident where he said an officer was attacked by this group using a sledgehammer.
There is some controversy over using the issue of, or the tools of proscription with regards to Palestine Action, because as a group, yes, they're disruptive, yes, they're illegal, yes, they do things that are expressly against the law, but are they on the same level as the sort of ISIS's or Al-Qaeda's of this world, those that behead people and cause mass death? I mean, is there an argument that there is a sort of level between legality and outright prescription that perhaps Palestine Action should fit within?
There's a line that you can cross, and I think many people, including clearly the Home Secretary, believes that that line has been crossed. Now, that's a cross between, that's a line that, you know, on the one hand, there is direct action protest. We've seen it with the likes of Extinction Rebellion and other activist groups that have been involved in causing, you know, real disruption and, you know, damage to property as well, when we've had many people, including on this channel, saying this is tantamount to terrorism, but really it wasn't. However, when you cross over into actually targeting military bases with acts of sabotage, which is what we've seen multi-million-pound aircraft vital to the defence of this country being targeted in secure military bases, a line has, I think, been crossed. And that's what the Home Secretary is arguing here, that this group has gone beyond just direct action which has targeted certain individuals and organisations that might not kind of really cross that threshold, to now going after the country's vital strategic national interests, in such as, you know, military bases and military assets. Yeah. And that's why we've got the moves now to outlaw this group as a terrorist organisation. OK, well, I'm just being told there were maybe some hand gestures there that weren't very polite, so apology for that. But we're going to head to Adam Cherry, who's in the thick of it for us in Trafalgar Square, reporting from there. Adam, tell us.
OK, so the protesters are now gathering just on the police line here, and so there is a police van, several police vans where all they're being. We've got a couple of protesters trying to get themselves heard. All the police vans are gathered beyond this police line. We've got several people who are very happy to talk to us, as you can probably hear. I can't hear you guys at all because it's so loud, so I hope you're getting good shots.
OK, as you can see, Adam's very trying to battle the loud noises right behind him, the megaphones.
I feel for Adam there.
Yeah.
That happens so regularly to reporters, these protests, especially with your professional activists. They see the cameras, they get up there. We're all scum, according to them. We're all touting whichever propaganda they happen to oppose at that time. So they want to go out of their way to shut down all conversation. And that's what they're doing now with Adam. And really, the only thing you can do in that situation is kind of walk away from them and then just try and continue your broadcast.
Yeah.
Now, the last group that the government prescribed was the previous government, I think, was Hizb ut-Tahrir, wasn't it? And that was pretty much done overnight, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Hizb ut-Tahrir is one of those as well, where there was a lot of prevarication over the years as to really, yes, of course, they do have some quite out there and extreme views, but do they cross the line, the threshold, into actual support for violent extremism? And the decision was made that, yes, actually what they are advocating in a lot of what they have sort of taught and preached over the years does cross that line. And that is Yvette Cooper's argument today. Whether you agree with it or not, she believes going after vital military assets in the way that they've done and showing a propensity to use violence and intimidating methods in doing that and going after our vital strategic assets, not just the military as such, but also the defence sector, other firms that are still vital to our military defence by feeding in to our military strategic infrastructure, that it does constitute an act of terrorism.
Now, we're still looking at these pictures on the screen here, where it does seem that things have perhaps picked up in rowdiness as we approach this 3 p.m. deadline when this protest is supposed to disperse. I wonder, Mark, in your experience of being at dozens, perhaps hundreds of these protests over the years...
Thousands, do you think?
Thousands. Over 25 years, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, goodness me. I mean, this is where it could get testy. When the police say, OK, you've had your fun, go home now, there will be some people, perhaps, who say, absolutely not, we shall not be moved.
That old chant. That was a long time ago, that one. But yeah, we're seeing the same type of thing, really. As I said before, what you get at all of these protests is a thinning out. The sort of more reasonable protesters who are there, who believe there is an argument for actually discussing the issue of whether you should prescribe a group under the Terrorism Act when, as they would see it, that isn't terrorism off the same ilk that you see ISIS and other terrorist organisations involved with, and they believe there's a reasoned defence of Palestine action there. There's a difference between those protesters, entirely peaceful, who want to get their voices across and who drift off, to those who stay, the professional activists by and large. The thinner the crowds get, the more extreme the group that's left, because they are the ones that want to stay there, that want to confront the police, that know that at 3 o'clock they have to clear the area, but are determined not to do it, because at the end of the day, they want a bit of a rammy, a push and a shove, and they'll just go on the usual course of being arrested, rounded up, going to a magistrate's court. And I've seen it so many times. The magistrates, yeah, OK, slap in the hand, off you go to your next protest and do exactly the same again.
Yeah. Well, you've seen it with your own eyes. Thank you very much, Mark. For now, we're going to bring in Professor Anthony Glees, who's a national security and counter-terrorism expert for us. Anthony, of course, we're looking at these pictures of Trafalgar Square where there is a protest taking place in support of Palestine action. We've just heard from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, that organisation will be prescribed as a terror organisation. It will be banned. In your mind, does Palestine action reach that threshold?
Well, I think it reached that threshold some time ago, to be honest. I mean, if you look at what they have cost this country in money, the most recent occurrence was the attack on Friday evening, I think it was, RAF Bryce Norton. They caused £25 million of damage to a jet engine there, and over the years they have done about £55 million worth of damage in a 5-year campaign of 356 attacks on various sites throughout the United Kingdom, all of which concern to maintain our national security. So they are an extremely dangerous group of people at the best of times. And I don't need to remind you that now is not actually the best of times as far as the international situation is concerned. We don't know who's behind Palestine action. I'm sure that a lot of people are protesting at the war in Gaza, and that should not, be a surprise. The war, in my opinion, that the Israelis are waging in Gaza, sort of war of attrition, really, against the ordinary people of Gaza, is appalling and atrocious, and significantly entirely different from the very targeted and surgical war they fought against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and now the targeted and surgical war they're fighting against the Ayatollahs in Iran. So I understand about Gaza protests. I understand about protesting at the policy of Netanyahu's government, which is to deny what is our policy in the United Kingdom of having a Palestinian state as being the only just solution to the problem. However, you cannot do £55 million worth of damage in this country, and we do need to know whether Iranian money and Iranian agents are actually backing this, because, of course, the Ayatollahs are the personification of the Islamist revolutionary idea. And yes, they're Shia, they're not Sunni. They are Shia, they're not Al-Qaeda, they're not the Islamic State. They're Hezbollah, they're the Houthis, they're Hamas. But they are Islamist terrorists all the same. And the people who are protesting in the name of Palestine action are perfectly happy to break the law and undermine our national security at a time of very considerable international insecurity. So yes, we should go for them. Whether it should be the counter-terrorist laws, we have other laws. I mean,
this is the point, Anthony, that I wanted to pick you up on, because I think no one can disagree with anything that you said there. The Palestine Action is a group that was explicitly formed, by all intents and purposes, to cause criminal damage, and that's what they've done time and time and time again. Obviously, the organisation can't be allowed to go on when it is an expressly criminal organisation. But I wonder, using proscription as a terrorist organisation, I mean, it's such a weighty list. I mean, if you even sort of write a pithy tweet of your support for a prescribed organisation, you can be hauled before the police. And if someone wants to say, oh, good, that building was splattered with paint, I mean, they might be a nasty person, but I mean, my goodness me, should they have the same level of police involvement knocking on their door as someone who said good for ISIS? I mean, to me, they seem like they exist both on the plane of criminality, of course, but on entirely different levels.
Well, I suppose I'm rather hardline about this. I certainly believe in peaceful opposition if that's what people want to do. And as I say, I think a very large number of people in this country not only understand but are sympathetic to the view that the Israelis are fighting an awful war in Gaza. Not a war they started, it has to be said, but the war is not going well in Gaza. It doesn't look good. And a lot of people feel that there should be a Palestinian state, as I do myself. But that doesn't entitle me to cause £55 million worth of damage and to boast about it. And as I say, the most recent occurrence, the attack on RAF Bryce Norton, at a time of a worsening situation in the Middle East, is an act of sabotage. Now, the trouble with government and national security is it has various laws and it moves here and there. But I think the government should rely entirely on two excellent laws passed when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister. The Public Order Act, which is meant to deal with the sort of scenes we're seeing with, but also the UK National Security Act, which introduces the criminal offence of sabotage in peacetime into our legal system. And yes, these are tough measures, but we live in tough times. And I don't think you can excuse criminal activity, and particularly criminal activity where you don't know who's pulling the wires. This is the problem. Even if the cause is just, it doesn't make criminal activity just as well. It stays a crime.
And Professor,
I don't think people want this, and they shouldn't have to have it.
Now, Professor, we saw more protests over the weekend that appeared to be in support of the Iranian regime, or at least some of those there were, carrying placards with the picture of the Ayatollah and choose the right side of history emblazoned across them. How worried should we be that there are people in this country, clearly, who support the Iranian regime as it is, and the potential issues that come from that, Professor?
Well, I think we should be worried, but more than being worried, I think we should be resolved not to allow these pro-Iranian groups to carry out acts of sabotage. I think if you look at this in the round, most people accept that, although rightly in my view, Sir Keir Starmer is letting the Israelis and the Americans carry on with their fight against the Ayatollahs without any active involvement of ourselves. I think that is the right policy. It's also true that in this country we have had many instances of Iranian-backed plots trying to subvert us here in this country. Luckily, we're too far away, 3,000 miles away from Iran, and the Iranians do not have an intercontinental ballistic missile that can hit us here. They know that. Now, they can have a go at RAF Akrotiri with the missiles only 1,000 miles away, and of course we have personnel and bases in the Gulf. They cannot attack us here in our homeland with a missile, but they can use their agents to disrupt and subvert public order here in the United Kingdom. And we've had hard evidence of that. I mean, 2 different networks were disrupted by our security and counter-terrorist police just a few weeks ago. They're awaiting sentence. People will recall the efforts made by the Iranian regime to get Daniel Khalifa to act as, at best, a spy, and at worst, somebody who would actively work against our defense community. And if you add these to the fact that MI5 has told us since 2022 it has disrupted 20 Iranian-backed sabotage plotters and assassination plotters in the United Kingdom. I mean, it's very important that the public should realize we're not only threatened by Russians in this country, we're not only threatened by Chinese, we are also threatened by Iranian groups who are exploiting the issue. And as I say, it is our public policy in the United Kingdom to support a Palestinian state. They're subverting what is a just and proper idea and using wrong and criminal methods to try and bring disorder. So this isn't about free speech. 55 million pounds of criminal damage and boasting about it in public is not free speech. And you know, your viewers may be as appalled as I was to hear Baroness Shami Chakrabarti, of course, former head of Liberty and then a shadow minister under Jeremy Corbyn. So it's absolutely outrageous that the government should think of acting against these groups. We've got to show that we are a strong and resilient democracy and that we're prepared to say no to people who want to disrupt us. We've got a good security service, good counter-terrorist police, and we have to be very wary that we are seen as a soft touch by the Iranians, who might not. I mean, they have threatened to, in America, to use their agents to attack the organs of the federal government in America. I think it's an idle threat. But we're seen as a soft touch, a softer touch than the United States of America. And it's right that we don't allow that to happen. I think a vast majority of British people are sick to the back teeth with these kind of unnecessary where the demonstrators are decent people protesting and wanting an end to the war in Gaza and an independent state of Palestine, a majority of British people agree with them. There's no point
I think
in
so. Well, Anthony, thanks so much for joining us and talking through this issue as we see this this protest sort of continue to go on. Anthony Glees, Professor, National Security Counter-Terrorism expert, of course. Thanks for your time. We are hearing this protest now actually get a little bit louder. We're hearing some boos, we're hearing some commotion. It is, of course, meant to end at 3 o'clock. I don't know about you, Emily. I'm looking at this protest here and I'm thinking these people aren't going to move.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what that bus is doing there as well. Whether it's been stuck there because of the crowds, but it's hard to make out exactly what's going on there. It looks like it's the roundabout. But anyway, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We're going to go straight to Martin now because he's got a rip-roarer of a show coming up, I heard. Martin.
Fantastic show, guys. Look, every single one of those protesters needs to be rounded up, scooped up into a meat wagon and arrested at 3 o'clock on the button. 6 minutes' time. I've been in these protests. I've been arrested on these protests. When a dispersal order comes into place, you get out of there sharpish or you get nicked. 3 o'clock is when that dispersal comes in. If those people aren't out of that postcode, they deserve to get arrested. Enough already. The definition of a hate march is supporting Palestine Action, a prescribed terrorist organisation. Those people support it, they're going to break a curfew, and they deserve to be chucked in the back of the nearest riot van at 3 p.m. sharp. Tune into this show to see if that happens. If it doesn't, then I'll say to you once again, we've got two-tiered policing. That's on my show 3 till 6. See you after the weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A fresher feel for most today, certainly compared to much of last week. Bright and breezy, many places dry with some sunny spells, but there are a few showers around across the northwest, close to this area of low pressure. That's what's changed the weather. The winds now coming in from the west, a fresher feel from the Atlantic. Some wet weather across the Northern Isles. That'll continue on and off through the day today. The showers will come and go across western Scotland. The odd shower elsewhere, northwest England, North Wales may be catching one, but many places dry, as I said, bright and breezy. That breeze is, though, quite noticeable, bringing that fresher feel. Temperatures only in the teens in many western areas, but still quite warm across the southeast, 23, 24 degrees Celsius likely here. As we go through the night, we will start to see a change. Stays a bit damp in Shetland, but some cloud is gathering out west. But a fine evening nonetheless for East Anglia and the southeast. Temperatures staying in the 20s here, but the clouds steadily increasing from the west, so Northern Ireland seeing the clouds starting to thicken. Still a few showers for the evening across the far north of England, and coming in at times across Scotland, most frequent over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but still some could get through the central belt. And then eyes out west as that thickening cloud in Northern Ireland starts to produce some damp conditions during the evening. Rain and drizzle pushing in across Northern Ireland by midnight, and then that zone of rain spreads into southern Scotland, northern England, north and west Wales. And some of it could be on the heavy side, particularly through the early hours over North Wales and northwest England. Will be a pretty warm night, with temperatures holding up in the mid-teens. Staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast. And might even start sunny here early on Tuesday, but the cloud will increase pretty rapidly. A dull, damp morning for northwest England, North Wales, southwest Scotland. The rain on and off here through much of the day. It does turn a bit brighter, and with some sunny spells across the Midlands and eastern England, it'll feel pretty warm and humid here with temperatures in the mid-20s. Elsewhere again, high teens or low 20s.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.